Oke, 3 minutes dulu ya, 3 menit.
Hi, good morning. Got it. I can hear, but I can write all myself.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, dan salam kebajikan. Morning, everybody. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Mas Shuri, S.Pd, and I am as your MC in our today's seminar Sastra, entitled Literature in Depth, Sharpen Your Critical Thinking in Literary Analysis and Cultural Studies. It is great honor for S.Pd Pertiwi to host this important seminar, which its objective is to sharpen your critical thinking in literary analysis and cultural studies. Before we start, allow me to present the rundown of our seminar today. So you will see the rundown. Okay, let's see, we start. From 9 sharp to 10 past 9 is the opening remark by the MC. It's me, I'm doing it now. From 10 past 9 to 9:15 is listening to our national anthem, Indonesia Raya. From 9:16 to 9:25 is the welcoming speech from Bapak Dr. Suharsono, M.Pd, M.M, the head of Yayasan Pendidikan Pertiwi Global. From 9:25 to 9:30 is the welcoming speech from Ibu Wulansari, S.Pd, M.Hum, as the head of S.T.B. Pertiwi, and later on she will be the moderator in this seminar. From 9:30 to 10:30, the delivery of seminar Sastra by our honorable keynote speaker, Bapak Dr. Manneke. From 10:30 to 10:50 is the question and answer session part 1, which will be conducted by the moderator, Ibu Wulansari, S.Pd, M.Hum. From 10:50 to 11:45, the continuation of the delivery of seminar Sastra by our keynote speaker, Dr. Manneke. From 11:46 to 12 o'clock, once again is the question and answer session part 2, which will be conducted by the MC, Mas Shuri, S.Pd, that's me. From 12 o'clock to to 12:05 is the closing prayer, which also be done by me. From 12:06 to 12:15 is the session for taking pictures together for the whole participants and the keynote speakers, and the announcement for the winners who will get mobile credit vouchers, and finally the closing of seminar Sastra that will be done by Ibu Wulansari, S.Pd M.Hum, as the head of STBA Pertiwi. Hadirin sekalian, mari kita bersikap hormat. Sesaat lagi kita akan mendengarkan our national anthem Indonesia Raya. Saya minta kepada para peserta untuk segera memute-kan mikrofonnya dan menghidupkan videonya dengan menunjukkan sikap hormat kepada lagu kebangsaan kita, Indonesia Raya.
Indonesia, kebangsaan kita dan tanah air. Marilah berseru
Mohon maaf, tidak boleh ada yang nyanyi ya. Ulang lagi.
yang bersatu.
Halo.
Tanahku hiduplah negeriku, bangsaku, rakyat semuanya. Terus bangunlah jiwanya, bangunlah badannya untuk Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya merdeka, merdeka, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya merdeka, tanahku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya merdeka.
Oke, tidak boleh ada jadi kita ulang kembali. Tolong dikasih tahu bahwa
sebentar teman-teman, saya tegaskan kembali lagi. Kita terpaksa karena perasaan, ya. Saat lagu Indonesia Raya diperdengarkan, seluruh hadirin tidak menyanyikan, teman-teman. Cukup mute. Ya. Tolong teman-teman semua serentak ya. Kita mute-kan speaker kita, tidak ada yang bersuara. Kita dengarkan dengan hikmat lagu kebangsaan Indonesia Raya. Hadirin sekalian, mari kita dengarkan welcoming speech from Bapak Dr. Suharsono, M.Pd, M.M. Pada Pak yang terhormat Pak Suharsono, waktu kami persilakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Mari kita senantiasa bersyukur atas karunia yang Allah limpahkan kepada kita semuanya. Hari ini kita menghadiri seminar virtual ya. Dan selamat pada Ibu Wulansari S.Pd M.Hum yang telah diangkat sebagai Ketua S.Pd yang baru menggantikan Pak Dr. Mulyadi. Semoga dengan kepemimpinan baru di S.Pd ini nanti akan membawa warna-warna baru, membawa pola-pola baru di dalam pembelajaran maupun pengelolaan S.Pd yang kita cintai. Bapak Ibu dan saudara-saudara sekalian, coba dengan seminar ini, sharpen your critical thinking in literature, analysis, and cultural studies. Karena ini adalah sekolah tinggi bahasa asing tentang sastra, ya tentang semua dengan sastra. Saya menyambut dan ke depan sebaiknya memang kita sering mengadakan seminar-seminar seperti ini, karena nanti ini bisa meningkatkan wawasan, bisa meningkatkan nalar, dan juga ketajaman pola pikir para mahasiswa semuanya. Apalagi pembicara-pembicara ini orang sudah pakar. Jadi ke depan saya kira nanti akan Bu Wulan dan timnya nanti akan mengadakan berbagai kegiatan dalam rangka meningkatkan kualitas lulusan S.Pd ini menjadi unggul berkarakter. Bapak Ibu dan saudara sekalian, sudah 10 bulan ini kita menghadapi suatu COVID, menghadapi suatu masalah ya dalam kehidupan kita. Kita akhirnya biasakan diri beradaptasi dengan masalah yang kita hadapi. Oleh karena itu saya mengajak kepada kita semuanya untuk berpikir dari perspektif yang positif tentang masalah yang kita hadapi. Kita belajar membangun sistem, kita belajar membangun namanya new normal. Nah inilah new normal yang sedang kita lakukan, adalah new normal kita. Seminar yang dulu diadakan secara tatap muka, sekarang kita adakan secara virtual, online. Dan ini juga new normal ini nanti akan terus bergerak sesuai dengan perkembangan-perkembangan yang ada di luar kita. Jadi nanti mungkin depan begitu ini mulai kita mix, namanya blended learning mungkin nanti kita. Ya, sebagian kita tatap muka, sebagian virtual. Atau mungkin ke depan lagi Anda nggak tahu, kita nggak tahu. Karena masa depan kita tidak tahu. Saudara dan saudara sekalian, dan Bapak Ibu yang saya hormati, jadi dari perspektif positif ini, kita belajar dan menyadari pentingnya yang namanya informasi, teknologi informasi. Dulu kita nggak pernah ini, jarang-jarang atau belum pernah mengadakan namanya pembelajaran jarak jauh, seminar virtual, bahkan nanti akan dikemas nanti adalah presentasi-presentasi skripsi virtual. Bahkan kita sedang mengadakan graduation secara virtual. Jadi ini adalah perkembangan-perkembangan terkini dan kita harus selalu bisa menghadapinya. Dan kita juga belajar. teman-teman semuanya kita belajar dua hal ini ya. Kita belajar tentang kebahasaan, kesastraan, dan satu lagi kita belajar tentang namanya kecakapan teknologi informasi. Yes. Dua-dua, karena hampir-hampir sama ya, di bahasa sama komputer teknologi informasi ini, teknologi informasi itu satu bahasa juga. Bahasa untuk pengembangan kita ke depan. Oleh karena itu, kita semuanya perlu melek teknologi, ya, kita perlu mempelajarinya supaya kita bisa beradaptasi dengan cepat. Bapak Ibu yang saya hormati, ke depan memang IT ini menjadi tantangan kita. Di S.Pd Pertiwi nanti akan selalu dikembangkan suatu sistem, ya, sistem manajemen, sistem pembelajaran, sistem pengelolaan yang berbasis pada teknologi informasi. Oleh karena itu kita semuanya harus melek, kita semuanya harus menguasai supaya kita bisa beradaptasi dengan cepat terhadap perkembangan-perkembangan yang ada di luar kita. Inilah kira-kira sambutan dari saya. Terima kasih atas partisipasinya, luar biasa nih S.Pd Pertiwi ini. Saya lihat ini ada 208 ini ya yang hadir dalam seminar ini. Selamat ya, semoga ilmu yang kita serap pada hari ini bisa mempertajam ya pemikiran kita secara kritikal kita di dalam literatur, analisis literatur maupun di dalam studi-studi budaya. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih banyak Pak Suharsono. Ya, itulah sambutan dari Bapak Dr. Suharsono as the head of Yayasan Pendidikan Pertiwi Global. Now, let us welcome Ibu Wulansari, S.Pd M.Hum, as the head of S.Pd Pertiwi yang akan memberikan welcoming speech. Waktu dan tempat kami persilakan Ibu Wulansari.
Oke, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Deeply thanks and special gratitude for all of us who have already been here, and thanks Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala who have already given us the great blissful day 12-12-20. Actually, it is a great number, or the great what you can call it day of us, because today we are going to have this what you can call it web seminar on literature. Yeah. First of all, I would like to say thank you for the founder of Pertiwi Global Foundation, Mr. Dr. Haji Suharsono, M.Pd M.Hum, for the great speech and also for the support given to us, not only today, but of course we have already been familiar enough with his motivation to give all of the improvement and especially continuous improvement on how we try to make everything better with S.Pd Pertiwi quality. And of course, I would like to say thank you for all of the CEO of Pertiwi Foundation and all of the great lecturers of S.Pd Pertiwi, the colleague, and also the structural board of S.Pd Pertiwi. Thank you very much for our beloved students of S.Pd Pertiwi who have already given the big trust to S.Pd Pertiwi. And also, I would like to say thank you very much for my favorite lecturer and also honorable keynote speaker for today, Mr. Dr. Manneke Budiman. Thank you very much, Pak Manneke, for joining in our great seminar today. As we know that actually there are so many ways to enhance and also to influence the students' ways to learn and to study in S.Pd Pertiwi. And I really hope that this is one of the ways to prepare you all to be the great competent graduates, and also the what you can call it, to build you such a great personality and building, yeah, of course, character building that we are going to have in so many seminars that we have, and also so many competence that we are going to have. Would like to make you all such a great students who are very patient, who are very loyal to S.T.B.'s quality assurance. And this is one of the quality assurance that we are going to promise to all of you. We cannot do anything without your support. So I really wish that you can support us to give such a improvement. Continuous improvement is very needed. And it is not only about the lectures improvement, it is not only about STBS improvement, but it is about your own improvement, our beloved students. And of course, with the help of the great lecturers of STBA Pertiwi, I really hope that linguistic area, literature area, and also skills in English would like to be what you can call it developed, would like to be improved, and of course you're going to be proud of us later. And it is not only for all of the students of STBA Pertiwi, but of course for the alumni of STBA Pertiwi. We really hope that it is going to be such a turning point for us that we are going to have it more and more. I believe that you are going to love us if we give you more. So let us serve you so we can help you more, we can assist you more to reach your dreams that you have already prepared in STBA Pertiwi. And thank you very much for anybody, especially our great committee, for my big team in STBA Pertiwi, because everything cannot be realized without your help. Thank you very much for all of the participations for our great seminar today. In depth, sharpen your critical thinking in literary analysis and cultural studies. It is just only one of the seminars, and don't forget that we are going to help you to improve yourself. And please try to help you by listening well to this seminar. Thank you very much for all of the participations, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
All right, thank you very much, Ibu Wulansari. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start the moment that we have been waiting for, okay, allow me to introduce that this seminar will be guided by our moderator, Ibu Wulansari, S.Pd M.Hum. And then also, this is the time that we have been waiting also. We will listen carefully, and you are free to make a note, yeah, to write down everything that you think it is necessary to be written down, because what we have today is very precious. So ladies and gentlemen, the time and the place for our moderator and the keynote speaker, Ibu Wulansari, S.Pd M.Hum, and Bapak Dr. Manneke. The time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Masuri, as our Master of Ceremony today. Welcome to our English seminar, our beloved STBA seminar on literature in-depth, sharpen your analysis or your critical thinking in literary analysis and cultural studies. Good morning, all of our beloved students, lecturers, colleagues, and also our beloved team of STBA Pertiwi. I'm going to be your moderator today. I'm Wulansari, S.Pd M.Hum. Everybody knows me, I believe. And today we are pleased to welcome Dr. Manneke Budiman as a very special keynote speaker for today. He is an expertise in literature and cultural studies, and today he is going to share with us his expert opinion on this literature and cultural studies. Now I'm going to read a little bit about his biography. Actually, he is also the graduate of English literature or English literary in University of Indonesia. And he also graduated his postgraduate program as a program in comparative literature, University of Wisconsin, Madison, United States, and his doctoral program in Asia Studies in University of British Columbia, University, Canada. And as you know that actually now he's going to having and also sharing anything about great things about literature and of course cultural studies. And now he is still teaching in literature and cultural studies in Faculty of Humanities in University of Indonesia. And of course with that I ask all of the participants to give full attention to Mr. Dr. Manneke Budiman and help me in welcoming him to the stage. Dr. Manneke, and by the way, before I give the time to Mr. Dr. Manneke, then I would like to remind you a bit. During this seminar, nobody having your microphone, please mute yours. Ya, tolong di mute semua mikrofonnya. Mohon maaf kalau nanti Anda tidak mute, nanti bisa kita nonaktifkan ya dari partisipasinya. And in this seminar, we are going to divide our time to have question and answer into 2 sessions. As the moderator, I would like to divide the time for you to have the first session that is at about 11, maybe on 11 p.m. Sorry, 11 a.m. Then we are going to give 5 students to have questions, and you can have it in chat room. Okay, so please listen first. Don't give questions first. Yeah, just listen first within 30 minutes, so you get knowledge from Mr. Manneke, and then you just try to write down in chat room, and then later there will be 5 students to have it the second session in what you can call it. If I have already given you a time to have the QA session. Okay, for Dr. Manneke Budiman, time is yours. Okay, please, sir. Pak Manneke, sepertinya speakernya masih di mute ya, Bapak ya.
Thank you so much, Ibu Wulan, for the kind introduction. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Before I start my presentation, allow me to first of all extend my special thanks to Bapak Suharsono, head of Yayasan Pertiwi Global, and Ibu Wulansari as head of S.Pd Pertiwi. It's good meeting you all. Thanks to the online meeting facilities that we have because of the pandemics. So give me a few seconds to prepare my presentation so that I can show my slides to you. All right, so this is actually the title that is given to me by the seminar team by Wulansari and her team. And I think this is a very timely and very important topic. Critical thinking is one type of soft skills that everybody will need in order to survive the digital era, the information era. And so our homework for everybody now is how can we instill critical thinking skills to learners, to students, especially those of you who come to S.Pd Pertiwi to learn. And the context is, of course, literary studies and cultural studies. So I'm going to talk about critical thinking in literary studies and cultural studies. While I am presenting my points, of course, if questions pop up in your mind and you cannot wait to ask the question, what you could do is type the question in the chat room, and then later Bu Wulansari will make sure that your questions get to me and I can answer them. So let us begin with critical thinking. What is this actually, critical thinking? So this is one particular type of thinking skills. Okay? Every day, we never stop thinking. We think about very simple things. We sometimes also think about very serious matters. But basically the idea is, as human beings, we never stop thinking. Even when we sleep, we think. Okay? When you are dreaming in the middle of your sleep, that is actually a thinking activity. The brain keeps on being active even when your biological body is resting. Okay? Now, critical thinking skills is a higher level of thinking activity. It takes some training, some additional habituation, some additional exercise in order to be able to obtain critical thinking skills on top of the activity of thinking that we have been doing throughout our life every day. So thinking skills is the type of skills that enables us to see, to find what is wrong in something, okay? When everybody else may fail to see it. So it's the ability to identify a problem, what is wrong in something, when anybody else don't see it. Okay, so that is why this is a very special skill, not just any thinking skill. Okay? Now, if you compare it with analytical skill, because sometimes we also hear people talking about analytical skill. So what is the difference between critical thinking skill and analytical skill? Now, let's say you have friends studying economics, studying mathematics. You have friends studying biology or engineering. All of them, like you, learn how to have analytical skill in their academic activities. They think using analytical skill to be able to use a formula, okay, to find an answer to a mathematical question, to be able to design a building or an architectural design. This all needs analytical skill. But okay, the fundamental difference is they don't necessarily need critical thinking skills, or they don't necessarily use critical thinking skills. Analytical skills is thinking in order to find a solution, okay, to solve a problem. Critical thinking, in particular, trains us to be able to identify a problem correctly. Okay? So this is where analytical skill and critical thinking skill is different. Critical thinking skill is actually the basis of analytical skill. But unfortunately, people learn to have analytical skill without having the important basis, which is critical thinking skill. Okay? So it is important for us at this very early stage of my presentation to understand the difference between the two. So these are things that are involved in critical thinking skill. Critical thinking skill is necessary because we have to be able to identify problems. Now, what is happening in our everyday life? Why our life has so many problems? It's because there are many solutions offered by many people to solve problems, but these solutions fail to work because we fail to identify the problem correctly. So as a result, one solution creates a new problem, and then another solution creates another problem instead of solving the problem once and for all. So the ability to identify a problem correctly, that is a characteristic of critical thinking skill. So that is one. Okay? Number two, critical thinking skill is necessary because it helps us maintain a critical distance from the object of our observation, from the problem that we try to solve. Nowadays, we hear a lot about social distancing, physical distancing. Okay? So critical thinking skill introduces a new kind of distancing, which is critical distancing. What is it actually? What does it mean? So in critical distancing, you as an analyst, as a researcher, as an observer, is required to create a certain distance from the object of your observation, from the topic of your research, from the object of your analysis. Why do we have to create such a distance? In order to maintain our objective mindset. Because if you are too close to the object of your observation, then you become one with the object. So it is then becomes very difficult to tell which one is you and which one is the object of your observation. The bias. So the subjectivity becomes dominant. For instance, if you fall in love madly with somebody, then it is hard for you to see what is wrong with that person. Everything that you see in that person is all beautiful, perfect, flawless. But once you create a distance from that person, you step backward a bit from that person, then you will start to be able to see imperfection, problems. Oh, the guy that I am falling in love with turns out to be short. Oh, he turns out to be bald. Oh, he's not as handsome as he is, when we are very close to each other. Okay, so by creating a certain distance, then you begin to see imperfection in the object of your analysis. And because of that, you can start to be critical to that object. Okay, yeah. So this is why, this is the second reason why critical thinking is absolutely important, especially for people who are studying in the higher education level like you, because all of you, this is the final stage for all of you before we let you go to the job market, and you have to struggle and survive on your own in order to find a decent job. It's good if you like it, but even if you don't like it, you sometimes have to bear it, because that's the reality of life. And critical thinking skill is a very valuable and precious skill that will help you survive in the job environment, in competing with the other or workers or employees in that place. And lastly, having critical thinking skill will help you to find something new in everything. Okay? Now, people say there is this proverb, there is nothing new under the sun, okay? Which is right. Okay? What we see every day in our life, there is hardly anything new. But possessing a critical thinking skill will equip you with the ability to find something new in what has been around for so long. Possessing a critical thinking skill gives you the ability to always be able to find something new in stuff that is considered old, familiar, or become an integrated part of our everyday life. So it seems there is nothing new anymore. But with a critical thinking skill, you will be able to find something new. Now, going back to your boyfriend or your girlfriend, for instance, the person with whom you are madly in love with. After a while, let's say after being together for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, then it becomes habitual. That person that you initially love very deeply becomes an ordinary person. Okay? But by maintaining this ability to find something new in everything, then you will be able to find something new in this person every day, every time. Yeah? So your relationship then becomes long-lasting. becomes like new every day. So this is the same. If you can identify a problem correctly by maintaining a certain distance from the object of your observation, then you will find something new. Otherwise, there will be no problem. If you cannot find something new, it means you cannot find a problem. But if you can find a problem, and every time you find a problem, you find something new to think about, something new to figure out, something new to solve, okay? Something new to struggle with, to live with, to keep you busy, and to keep you alive. That is the idea of critical thinking skills. It's a life skill. Now, how do we apply or how do we adopt critical thinking skills when studying literature, when dealing with a literary text? Now, of course, you have been taught by your teachers the elements or the basic components of literature. You have plot. Plot is how a story is constructed. You have characters. Characters are the people that are involved in a story, in a literary text. They can be good characters, they can be evil characters, okay? But these are people that make the story alive and interesting. Okay? But there is also then a narrator. A narrator is the person who tells the story. The narrator can be one of the characters in the story, but it can also be a person outside the story who knows everything and who is talking to us, the reader, and telling us how the story goes. Okay, so that is narrator, the person who tells the story. And there is always a message or a theme at the end of the story. Yeah? This is what the author of the text is trying to convey to us. An idea that the author is trying to promote to us. Okay? Something that the author is trying to persuade us to believe, to agree, or to adopt. It must be something important. Otherwise, the author would not waste his or her time to write the literary text. Okay? Because the author has something important to tell us. That's why we have the text in front of us. And in order to convey the message of the story to us, the author needs a narrator because he cannot or she cannot speak directly to us. So the author needs a narrator in the story to tell us what is going on. And then the narrator, in turn, will tell us who are the players, who are the actors, who are the people involved in the story. And also, what is the story about? What happens? What events? What incidents happen throughout the story from the beginning until the end? So these are all what you see on this slide are the basic elements of a literary text. So we start from the very basic of literature. Okay? We start building our critical thinking skills from these basic components. So let's take a look at one by one now. Let's start with plot, which is at the top of the slide. Okay? A plot is the way a story is constructed. So the way in which one event relates to another event, creating a sequence of events from the beginning until the end. Okay. Yeah. So that is the plot. The plot is constructed. Who constructs the plot? the narrator, it's the person who tells us the story, has the freedom to construct the plot in any way he or she wishes. Okay? For instance, a narrator may choose to tell a story using a chronological order, from what happens first, what happens second, third, fourth, and so on until the last event in a linear way. Or a narrator who is like more creative and more imaginative can create a story in a rather different way. The narrator could, for instance, start from an event happening in the middle. Okay? And then he or she will take us back to the beginning, jumping to the beginning, to the past. Or jumping fast forward to the future, to what happens in the end. And the reader, all of us, will have to work extra hard in order to digest, to make sense of the plot of the story, if the plot is constructed this way. Yeah? But there are many ways. There is more than one way to construct a plot. It's the same when you tell a story to your friend. Okay? Something happens in the middle of your way to S.Pd from home. Let's say you see an accident. Okay? And then when you arrive on campus, you tell the event to your friends. Tahu nggak, there was an accident on my way here. And then your friends, they become interested. Oh, tell us what happened. Now, you could choose to start from the very end or from the very beginning. You could start by saying, for instance, oh, supirnya dan keneknya dua-duanya mati. That means you choose to start from the end. And then tracing back to the beginning. Or you can start from the beginning. Ya, pertama-tama itu gue lagi naik motor, tiba-tiba lewat Metro Mini. Okay, so chronological, linear from the first event to the second event and until the end. So that is how the narrator constructs the plot. Now, of course, in all these events, there are people involved. An event cannot happen without a person. Okay? So there must be a person or more than one person for an event to be able to take place. That's why we need characters. Okay? You have the Metro Mini driver, you have the connect, you have the passengers, you have a motorcycle driver who is involved in the accident with the Metro Mini. Okay? And then when you tell the story to your friends, you can choose a position as a narrator. You can take side with one of the characters. If you are sympathetic with the motorcycle driver, then you will blame the accident on the Metro Mini driver. Or if you are in solidarity with the Metro Mini driver, then you will put all the blame to the motorcycle driver. That's the way the narrator create characters. A character is good, another character is evil, some other characters are neutral. A character is more important than another. Okay, yeah. One character may die in the middle of the story. Some characters will live until the end of the story. Some may end up successful. Some may become miserable at the end. Okay, it's up to the narrator to tell the story and what happens with each of the characters, right? Yeah. And the message is what theme the narrator chooses to highlight. For instance, you as a witness to the accident can tell your friends that makanya kalau naik motor itu hati-hati. The necessity to drive safely and carefully, especially if you are on a motorcycle. Or you can tell your friend, dasar memang supir metro mini itu brengsek semua. Okay, yeah. So you create a negative stigma on a certain group of profession or a certain group of people. Yeah. Now the message is something that you want to highlight and that you prefer or you choose to convey to other people. Okay? As a narrator, as the one who tells the story. Now, we have one more problem. The problem is concerned with you as the narrator. And the question is, are you a reliable narrator or not? Can the listeners trust you or not? If I read a novel, then my question is, can I trust the narrator or not? Because the narrator is a human being, an imaginative storyteller, but still a human being. And a human being is not free from biases. A human being can be trustworthy or untrustworthy. In order to be able to answer the question whether the narrator is reliable or not, critical reading skill and critical thinking is absolute. Otherwise, you will just trust what the narrator says. You will just buy and believe in whatever the narrator says and consider it as the truth. Okay. Now, in order to find whether the narrator is reliable or not, whether the narrator tells the truth or not, you need to examine very carefully the message that the narrator chooses to tell you. Okay? So when you tell your friend, makanya lain kali kalau naik motor itu kita mesti hati-hati. So your friend can draw a conclusion that you're not very sympathetic with motorcycle drivers. Okay? Yeah, that is the message that you want your friends to embrace or to agree with. So examine the message that the narrator conveys to us very critically and very carefully. And then the question is, why does the narrator choose this message? Why not another message? Okay. When you ask that question, you start identifying problems. You start activating your critical thinking ability. Next question will be, now I want to investigate how the characters are told. Each of them, how each of them is constructed by the narrator. Why Amina becomes an evil character? Why Tono becomes a good character? Why Siti is killed in the middle of the story? Why Amil has to be poor and unsuccessful at the end of the story? All these why questions are critical thinking activities. Okay. And then finally, you also ask the question, why does the narrator construct the plot of the story in this way? Why does he jump to the end first and then going back to the very beginning step by step? Or why does the narrator choose to tell the story in a linear way as if to make it easy for us to follow the storyline? Okay. All of these questions is the activation of your critical thinking skills. You don't just ask what happens. You don't just ask who are the characters. You don't just ask where does the story happen. You don't just ask when does the story happen? But you ask why question, a lot of why questions. Okay, that is the indication of the activation of critical thinking skill. Now, this is the basic plot structure of a literary text. Okay. Now, if you look at the red line, it looks easy. It forms a pyramid, like a tip of a mountain. Okay? From going, starting from below, going up, up to the top, and then going down. Okay? And you have the names of each stage there. Exposition, that's the beginning, introduction, rising action, when conflict begins to happen, climax, that's the most important event or the turning point of everything that happens before. And then falling action is kind of like the cooling down. You know, after the most important thing happens, then cooling down begins, and eventually we reach the resolution or the end of the story or the denouement. Now, but as you can see, in each of the major stages, there are details. In the exposition stage, characters, all of them are introduced to us. Who is the major character? Who is the protagonist? Protagonist is the good or positive character. Who is the antagonist? The evil character. Opposing the good character. And who are the minor characters? Figuran, penggembira. Where does the story take place? Setting, latar, yeah. In planet Mars, for instance, in New York City or in Banyumas, okay, it's a setting. Okay, the goals. What does each of the characters want to do? Okay, goals, motivation, why they want to do it, yeah? And what is at stake? Okay, what happens if I fail to achieve the goal as a character? Yeah. Status quo is what is happening, what is existing at present. Okay, the situation now. Yeah. Okay, so these are all information that you will have when you read a literary text at the exposition level, and then kick off. Yeah. Something happens to the protagonist, to the main good character. Okay? A conflict suddenly. Okay? Or information, knowledge, situation, yeah, in which the protagonist has to face the conflict. Okay? So something happens that kicks off the whole story. That is at the exposition level. And this opening incident, it is what allows the story to develop further, going up. Now we see conflict, okay, between a person and another person, a person with himself or herself, conflict batin, that's what we call it, okay, inner conflict, or it can be a person with nature, okay, or with the whole society, or with technology, like what Pak Suharsono mentioned in the opening remark. Okay, it's what the biggest thing that we are facing now, okay? Or with ghosts, with supernatural beings. It can be all kinds of conflict. Yeah? It is about health, it is about love, about life, about death, happiness, freedom, all kinds of things. Yeah, you name it. They all can be the sources of conflicts. Yeah? And so tension begins to rise. Yeah? Suspense. The suspense, the thriller, if you watch a movie, action becomes to be intensified. There are more and more and more actions. That is rising action. Yeah? And all the way up until it reaches the climax. The climax is the most important event in the story, in which the fate, the destiny, the future of the main character is decided. Whether the main character loses in the conflict, whether the main character wins, successful, fails. Okay, these are all kinds of things that could happen in the climax level. And then when it happens, the story cannot go up higher anymore, and it begins to go down, falling action. It's the result of the most important event in the story. Somebody dies, somebody gets married, somebody uh, 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 lives a miserable life because of his or her failure. Okay, all kind of very good things or very bad things, okay, that happen in the end. And then ending. The resolution is the ending of the whole story. Okay? Usually in the old children's stories or folk tales, the resolution or the denouement is signified by this very popular clause or phrase, and they live happily ever after. That is the basic formula of a happy ending resolution in the story. Okay? Yeah. So this is the basic plot structure. Now you can apply critical thinking skills, asking all the why questions in every stage of the story development here, but also to every detail that we can see in each of the stage. Okay. Yeah. So all the why questions that are jumbled in your mind, you have to reorganize them in order to make them all make sense, coherent, so you can ask the right questions to the text. Yeah. Okay. You then this is the moment when you create a critical distance from the text. Okay. You are no longer madly in love with the text. You are no longer hypnotized by the beauty of the text. You are no longer fascinated, okay, by what the text has to offer to you, but you maintain now some steps backward. Hold on, I don't want to be too close to you, yeah, because I need to find more about you. Okay? Things that I cannot see in passing in a very short time on the surface, but now I want to investigate, I want to examine that deeper. Okay, so I want to create a distance. Istilahnya, if you are with a boyfriend or with your girlfriend, kita pisah dulu ya bentar. Ya, nanti balik lagi kalau sudah memang betul mau kembali lagi. Okay, that is the moment you create a critical distance. And when you manage to answer or to find the answer to all the why questions, you find new things in the story. You find novelty in the story. Okay, that is the fruit or the result of critical thinking activity. So let's move on to the next slide. Yeah. Now we see now two levels. One is external level of the story, and the other one is the deep level of the story. When a story develops, okay, in the diagram that you have seen in the previous slide, there's problem, task, there's a need, there's a state, fear, skill, and then until the end, goal, and want. When this happens, okay, when the story begins and develops until the end, that is what is happening on the surface. That is what you read with your eyes on the pages of the novel or of the literary text. But something else is happening in beneath that. okay, deeper. Okay. Beneath what is written on the pages of the text, there is something else going on. You see a transformation is taking place. A character changes. At first, the character is a doubtful person. At first, a character can be a coward, a person with no courage, okay? A person who is fearful of everything. And then at the end, because of so many things happening, that character changes to be a solid character, a person who is brave, a person who is not afraid of anything, a person who is decisive, yeah, in dealing with problem. Uh, so, in other words, from an ordinary person, a character then becomes a hero. That is transformation. Yeah? Because the way the story develops, the character also develops and changes to be somebody who is better, or can be somebody who is worse. Yeah? That depends. That depends on what the narrator wants to do with the character. Okay? If I'm a narrator, I can decide which character I want to make a hero, which character do I want to make the evil one. It's up to me. Yeah? So transformation can be a positive transformation, can be a negative transformation. But with the result of all the conflict and the events, the person changes to become a better person or worse. Okay, yeah. So that is the deep structure. Now, in order to be able to see what is happening in the deep structure, you need critical thinking. It's not enough to be able to read, but to be able to read critically. Then you will start seeing the deep structure. If you just read what is on the surface of the text, yeah, it's just reading. You will just understand the story, but that is all. But if you apply critical reading, then you will be able to see the transformation of the characters. So that is critical thinking. Now here is the design of a story in general. I'm talking about story literature in general. Okay, there is always a story. Without a story, there is no literature. Okay, literature is about a story, and a story always has two basic things. Number one, plot, the way events are constructed and developed, and then characters, people who are involved in the events. Under plot, you have chronology, events that are arranged according to the sequence of their happenings, or according to the chronological order, A, B, C to Z. Yeah? So that's one thing. And then another thing, that's the narrative. Narrative is the way A, B, C to Z are constructed by the narrator. So sometimes from A, the narrator jumps to E, and then jumps to O, and then jumps to W. So there is no obligation for the narrator to do it chronologically all the time, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So narrative can be different from the real sequence of the events. Okay, and yeah, because of the way the narrative is built, a story can be a central story, and then another story can be a sub story. Yeah. So this is very clear and very obvious in Sinetron or Drakor, or if you like reading buku serial Silat Ko Ping Ho. My generation still loves reading Silat Ko Ping Ho. Now, of course, there is the beginning and there is the end. Okay? But in the middle, between the beginning and the end, in sinetron, in drakor, in seri silat, okay, there are so many small events happening which distract the reader or the audience from the main story. We think that we almost reach the end of the story, and then suddenly something else happens. Ya, we are happy bahwa ini kekasih yang terpisah lama, now they are going to meet. And then just when they're about to meet, something happens and they fail to meet. And they miss each other. They overlook each other. Menyebalkan sekali. Those are the subplots. Smaller events, smaller stories that distract the main plot. Why do we have subplots? Yeah. That is something that we have to ask the narrator. Why do you do it this way? Why not making a linear, simple storyline? Why do we have to have branches? Yeah. Okay. In sinetron, in drakor, subplots result in the prolonged story, in the existence of more episodes instead of finishing the story in just 5 episodes because of subplots. Now you have 25 episodes before you reach the end of the story. Yeah, so those are subplots. Okay. Now if you move to the right, you see characters. And then when you talk about characters, you can only understand one character in relation to the other characters. Okay. Si A ini gimana sih karakternya? You can only answer that by looking at how A berhubungan dengan B, C, D, and so on. Then you can start judging. Oh, ternyata dia impatient. Oh, ternyata dia kasar. Oh, ternyata dia heartless, ya, nggak punya hati. Oh, ternyata dia sympathetic. Oh, ternyata dia has a golden heart. She loves helping others. You can only say so only when you relate one character with the other characters in the story. Now, what is the role of the other characters in the story? Some of them can be the allies, the friends of the main character. Some others become the opponent, the opposition. Okay? Yeah? There is always these two poles, yeah? Positive, negative. So the main characters have some friends who support him or support her, but also enemies. Yeah, people who don't like to see the main character successful or win. Okay, and yeah, these people, they can be in the form of lover, yeah, kekasih, istri, pacar, yeah, or friend, teman, yeah, sohib, sobat. Okay, yeah, just like this. Yeah, this is very clear, and you will be able to find most of them in almost any story, almost any piece of literary work. Yeah. Now you already see in the slide before that each of the boxes here, they can be explored, further to the small details, yeah, in order to problematize them, in order to find or to see problems in each of the boxes here. Okay, that is when you look at this construction, using critical thinking skills. Okay? Why the narrative is constructed in this way? Why is the chronology arranged in this way? Why are there so many subplots? Okay? Why the central plot is so difficult to complete? Okay? It's not easy, not simple, but there are so many branches. Okay? And also talk about characters who are allies and who are opponents and so on. Okay? So next slide. Now, there is another important aspect which we haven't discussed so far, and that is called the point of view. Yeah. So when you have a narrator telling you the story, the first thing that you need to identify is whether the narrator is telling the story in the first person mode or in the third person mode. What do they mean? When a narrator is telling a story in the first person mode, the narrator will use I all the time. Okay? Yeah. Which means the narrator can address you, the readers, directly. If I'm the narrator and I use I, then I can, whoever I'm talking to, it means they are you, because I'm directly talking to them. So there are stories in which the narrator is I. I will tell you something that happens 20 years ago in my life. This is the beginning of the story, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so it's I. Yeah. But it can also be, a story can also be narrated in the third person. So we don't see the narrator. But whenever he talks about characters, he keeps on using he, she, they. Yeah. So the narrator tells the story using third person pronoun. He, she, they. Okay. Never I is used by the narrator. That, at this point, you have to be able to distinguish the narrator from the character. Okay. The narrator can be one of the characters, but the narrator can be none of the characters outside the story, but telling you the story, but outside the story. Like a reporter, somebody who is not involved in the event, but reports the event to other people. Okay? Yeah. So, first person, I, me, we, us, third person, he, she, they. Yeah. Now, next question is, if the narrator uses the first person narrative, I, me, we, us, the next question is the narrator a major character in the story or not? Okay. The main character of the story or not? The answer is either yes or no, because it makes so much difference. If the narrator happens to be the major character, then he or she will be the center of the story. Okay. Yeah. If the answer is yes, then the narrator will be the major participant. If the answer is no, then the narrator is one of the characters who is standing on the side, yang berdiri di pinggir, yeah, minor participant. Yeah. Next question is the story told or written in past tense or in present tense? Yeah. If it's past tense, then there is a distance between when the event happened and when the event is told. There is an interval or a distance between the two. So you have to pay attention to this first. Okay? Whether the narrator is telling the story that is happening now, or a story that happened in the past or in the long past. Yeah, so that is what we see on the left side of this slide. Now let's go to the right side now. Okay. What if the narrator is using the third person narrative? Okay. Yeah, and so the question is how much the narrator knows about what is going on in the character's mind. Okay. Does the narrator know everything that is happening in the character's mind, or whether his or her knowledge is limited? Okay. Now, if the narrator, the person who tells the story, can have full access to what's going on in the character's mind, that means that the narrator knows everything. Dia tahu apa yang dikerjakan, which is observable, we can see it with our eyes, but dia juga tahu apa yang terjadi di dalam batin setiap tokoh. So the narrator can go into the inner life of the characters. Atau the knowledge about what's going on in the character's mind is limited. So the narrator can only tell you what the character does, but the narrator doesn't have access or knowledge of what the characters think. Yeah. Okay, that also makes a difference in how a story develops. Now, if a narrator knows everything, then you have no problem, because every information that you need about a character will be supplied by the narrator. But it will be a very challenging reading if the text that you read has a narrator who only has a limited knowledge or access to the character's mind. Sometimes we won't know what is really happening until the end of the story. As the character does something. Because the character does something, then we can draw a conclusion. But we cannot draw any conclusion about the character from something that he or she doesn't do. Yeah? Because the narrator cannot tell us that. Okay, so the knowledge that the narrator has is the same as our knowledge about all the characters in the story. So that is the character that doesn't know everything. It's the objective observer. Objective because he can only tell what he sees. Okay. Whereas a familiar observer knows everything. Oh, dia itu orangnya baik hati, pemurah, suka traktir, pemaaf, gampang sekali melupakan dendam. How do you know? Because I have known that person for 30 years. Nah, itu you are a familiar observer or narrator. Yeah, so it's different. Yeah, almost you can tell everything about a character because you're so familiar with that character. All right. Yeah. So this is also important. Okay? Point of view invites us to see what is happening from the eyes of the narrator. Okay. Point of view decides how we see the story in the way or in the same way as the narrator sees the story. Okay. Yeah. So, so what is the effect of a point of view? It can lead us to a certain conclusion. Okay. The point of view of a character leads us to a certain conclusion that the narrator wants. Right? Yeah. It's the same when you tell your friends the story of the Metro Mini accident. your point of view of the accident, the way you see the accident, is how your friends will also see it when you tell it to them. And then suddenly become, wah iya emang semua masuk metro mini itu brengsek semua. So they agree with you. Okay? Atau, oh iya memang orang naik motor itu wah kacau ya. Nggak sayang nyawa. So they also agree with your point of view. Okay? So that is the powerful effect of the point of view of a narrator. And you also have to be critical to that. Yeah? When you read literary text. Am I reaching? Oh, is it the first round, Wulan?
Yes, yes, sir.
So
Yes,
shall we pause here and then give
yeah.
opportunity?
So we are going to give time for us to read the questions,
Okay.
sir.
Yeah. So I will stop sharing the slide for the time being, right?
Yeah, Mr. Stanley would like to present the 5 questions come up. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Manneke Budiman, for the great, what you can call it, sharing, yeah, especially for critical thinking. We have already got a little note before we give you some questions. Actually, by having critical thinking, that we can identify something new. You know, after getting something new, and of course, then we are going to get new problems. And of course, by having been busy with new problems, then of course you are going to find out how to solve the problems, right? So that's the point that we got from the first. And also, we got a lot of things related much with what you can call it, literary analysis. Actually, you have already been empowered in your class, and also, of course, with the seminar, you got a lot. And we have already got 5 critical questions. We are going to present it first. So, Mr. Manneke, here are the questions. Okay, the first is from Mr. Abdul Kasib, yeah, from Kasib. I think that he is an employee student, yeah. The question, there are 2 questions. The first is, how far is the role of critical thinking to determine our character keep stable in shifting radical social interaction caused by COVID atmosphere? I would be a good narrator. I need to know how to survive in this situation. And the second question for the presenter, how to prepare a good narrator who don't have any conspiracy in telling the story. Maybe, Mr. Manneke, do you mind me having all of the questions, or are you going to answer the question one by one?
Let's take a look at the questions one by one.
Okay, yeah, one by one. Okay, so the first question. Yeah.
So everybody can focus on one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So this question seems to be the application of critical thinking in literary study class into our real life, because it is connected with COVID situation nowadays. So what is the role, or how far is the role of critical thinking in helping us to deal with the changing social interaction because of the COVID-19 situation or pandemics? All right. Now, you may have observed so far, at least in the last 10 or 11 months since the outbreak of the pandemic, that we have received many more, a great number of news concerning the virus, concerning the vaccine sometimes. They're all conflicting, confusing, to the point that you don't know which one is true, which one is not, which one is accurate, which one is not, which one is valid, and which one is not. Yeah. So the question is, how can we tell? How can we know that the information that we receive or that we choose to believe is a reliable information, not misinformation or disinformation? That is how, or that is where critical thinking skills become useful. I will, of course, talk about this later in the second round, near the end of the second round. But what I can tell you at this point is that there is no other way nowadays, okay, for us to do as an observer than to embrace and to adopt the skeptical mode of thinking. That is unfortunate. That is not something that we prefer to do in a normal situation. We don't want to be a skeptical person because that is a very sad situation for us to be a skeptical person. But in this extraordinary situation in which we don't know anymore what the truth is, and at the same time, there is this tsunami of information coming to you through all kinds of social media and online media, then you have to select. If every day you receive 5,000 information, you have to select 10, 20, 50 that you are sure are reliable, accurate, and valid. In order to be able to select, you need to activate your critical thinking skills by, first of all, being skeptical from the very beginning. Meaning, you adopt a questioning mode. When you receive information, regardless how beautiful the information is designed, regarding who the person that brings the information to you. Yeah? Doesn't matter whether it has a very fascinating visual aspect. You still have to be skeptical. That is the first step. How can we be skeptical? Asking, ini benar nggak sih? And before you can answer that question, do not forward the news or the information to any other people. Okay? It doesn't matter how strong the temptation is to do that. But until you can answer, ini benar enggak sih? Until you can answer that, do not forward. Better it stops at you. Of course, later on, it may be proven that it is true. Fine. Of course, then other people have already forwarded that news faster than you do. Fine. Let it be. But at least you do not contribute to the dissemination of information which you are not sure whether it's valid or not. Ya. Iya kalau valid, kalau enggak, how many people will have been misled by our forwarding or disseminating the news to others. Okay, jadi actually critical thinking can be summarized in one word: be skeptical. At whatever you receive from whoever it is. Tapi saya terimanya dari dosen saya. Ya, but in this era of information technology, dosen saya juga bisa menerima dari sumber yang tidak reliable. Ya, for instance. Okay, so be skeptical, do your homework, find out what is the truth. If you cannot find the truth, don't forward. That is to keep ourselves sane, supaya kita tetap waras, ya, in this era of fake news and hoaxes. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, it will be very easy for you to go into trouble because of that. Somebody gets offended, dituntut, dibilang fitnah, menyebarkan berita bohong. Okay, so suddenly your life turns to hell because of that. Second question, how to prepare a good narrative? Don't have. If you are an author or a writer of a literary text, it depends on what is your purpose of writing the text. What message do you want to convey to your reader? Sometimes authors intentionally, on purpose, create a narrator who is not reliable, who is part of a conspiracy. Jadi, not all stories itu have reliable narrators. And if a narrator is unreliable, cannot be trusted, it's not because the author is bad. The author does that intentionally in order to create or to achieve a certain effect. That is why we have to be skeptical, we have to be critical to the narrator. Ceritamu ini benar nggak sih? That's the question you ask when you read the text to the narrator. Can I trust you? Can I is what you say about a certain character correct or not? Penilaiannya narrator tentang satu orang tokoh itu betul tidak? You cannot take that for granted. Kita tidak bisa menganggap pasti namanya narrator pasti jujur. No, it's the same. Whenever information or news get to your cell phone, Instagram and so on, do not assume that whoever sends it to you is reliable. Do not take it for granted that it must be an accurate and valid information. Especially nowadays, especially today. Probably 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it would be different. But today, unfortunately, you have to create a critical distance between you and the information that you receive. You have to be able to identify a problem in the news or in the information that you receive. And sometimes our ability to identify a problem can be distracted by the sophistication and the beauty of the message. Begitu dibilang ini dikatakan oleh Albert Einstein, wah sudah langsung kita percaya total, no longer question the validity. But is it really Albert Einstein? You know? So that is the question. Is the narrator lying to us? Ya, kadang-kadang ternyata bukan Albert Einstein. Oh, saya juga nggak tahu. Saya terima dari orang lain, sih. Ya, okay. Yeah. So hopefully that answers the question from Mr. Abdul Qasim. Number 2, Sofyan. Okay, what will we do next? How? If you can identify problems by maintaining critical distance from the object of your analysis, and then as a result, you find new things. That is the end of your homework. Yeah. So there is no what will we do next. You have reached the end. Finding novelties, finding something new, that's the goal. Okay. But the next question is how to sharpen critical thinking. Exercise, exercise, exercise. Read as many texts as possible in the classroom, outside the classroom. Do the assignments that your teachers ask you to do, because they ask you to do that in order to sharpen your critical thinking skills, not in order to make your life difficult or miserable. Okay, yeah. by practicing a lot, every time you receive something, be skeptical, find a problem in it, distance yourself from it in order to be able to find what is wrong, what is lacking, what is the weak point of this information or this news that I receive from my friend. Okay? If each time you practice that, then it will become sharper and sharper and sharper in time. But it is not easy to do. Why? Because every day we receive thousands of them. And as a result, there is hardly enough time for us to think about each of them. You want to do everything instantly, as quickly as possible. So you don't give yourself enough time to think of each of them. And the creator of hoaxes and fake news know that. Ya. Maka itu sekarang itu ada peribahasa. Suatu kebohongan jika terus-menerus dengan secara cepat dan intens diulang-ulang, dia akan menjadi kebenaran. Why? Because the receiver, the audience, won't have time to apply critical thinking. Yeah. That is the effect of repeated and intense fake news. Makanya you don't want to be part of disseminating fake news. Karena kalau kita berpartisipasi di dalam penyebarannya, you create a tsunami of information to other people to whom you share the news. Yeah. Now, I said it is difficult to really consistently practice critical thinking skills. For instance, if you watch a movie, film yang sedih sekali, you see it is very easy for you to cry, to get carried away by the plot. And then suddenly, without you realizing it, tears come down from your eyes. Terharu, nangis. Or, if a character is so stupid, you become very angry and impatient. Aduh, goblok amat sih. Sebel, nontonnya sebel sekali ya. Itu temennya jahat kok dia nggak ngerti-ngerti ya kalau jahat sih. But all kinds of emotional reaction. Now, when we react that way to a movie, to a text, to an event out there, critical thinking kita sedang lumpuh. Because if you are consistent in applying critical thinking, you won't be easily carried away. Nggak mungkin dengan mudah dihanyutkan. Nggak mudah nangis kalau nonton film sedih. Nggak mudah marah kalau dapat berita yang menggusalkan. Because you will ask, ini benar nggak sih? Jangan-jangan di studio, kapal tenggelam, padahal itu di ember, bukan di laut. But because of the special cinematic effect, it suddenly looks real to us. And as a result, we cry, or then we get upset, and so on. Now, you see, movies, news, stories, they can control our emotion if we allow them to do it. So how can we not allowing them to do it? Yes, we can. How? Critical reading, critical distancing. Jadi, when you become an analyst, you don't just read, but you analyze. And when you analyze, you don't allow your emotion to interfere in the process. It will be purely logic that works, not emotion. It's the brain, not the heart. Okay? Yeah. That is how you manage critical thinking. That is how you practice to sharpen your critical thinking ability. Number 3, Riza Mahardika. Yeah. So what are the differences between critical thinking and point of view? Point of view is the way a narrator sees the events in the story. Cara seorang pencerita melihat atau memandang kejadian dalam cerita. Oke. Critical thinking adalah cara kita menyikapi itu. Ya. Kok gini sih caranya si narrator cerita? Kok dia menjelek-jelekan si A dan memuja-muja karakter B? So when you do that, you are critical to the point of view of the narrator. Wah, naratornya memihak yang ini, nggak asik. That is how you differentiate between critical thinking process, which is happening in your brain, and the point of view, which is happening on, in the narrator. And you have to create a distance between you and the narrator. Ya, gitu. Okay. It is hard. Katakanlah we watch an action movie. Semua orang yang nonton action movie, they want to identify dengan jagoannya. Okay, nobody watching action movie wants to identify dengan penjahatnya. Alright, so it's very easy for us to identify with the main character. Oh, I want to be like the main character. Yeah, I want menjadi jagoan. I want menjadi hebat like that main character. Yeah. When you say that to yourself, you are actually identifying with the narrator. Wrong. Don't do that when you are analyzing a text. If you read a text just to be able to enjoy it, feel free, go ahead. But if you analyze a text, you have to try to not identify yourself with the main character, because sometimes the narrator is in the main character. Okay, yeah. So create a distance in order to be able to be critical. Ini kok gitu ya naratornya ya? Masa yang ini kasihan banget dimatiin di dalam ceritanya? Kenapa? Padahal saya suka dengan karakter yang itu. Nah, so when you do that, you are asking critical questions. It's like a doctor trying to diagnose the symptoms in the patient. Kenapa ya kok dia hidungnya meler terus? Kenapa ya kok suhu tubuhnya itu 38,5? Padahal orangnya kelihatan segar, for instance, nggak sakit. So at that point, the doctor is creating a critical distance from the patient in order to be able to make an accurate diagnosis. Coba dokternya itu distracted. Waduh, pasiennya cantik, seksi. Ya, lupa dia memeriksa suhu, memeriksa detak jantung. Ya, karena kesengsem dengan wajah cantik pasiennya, diagnosisnya salah. Mestinya flu dibilang kanker. Okay, yeah, all right. Critical distance, yeah, Riza, yeah. So yes, it is directly related to the object. Yeah, the closer the object to you, the harder for you to be critical. Itu sebabnya kita nggak bisa kritis pada orang yang sangat dekat dengan kita. It is very easy to be critical to people that we don't know. Yeah. Orang di tempat lain gitu ya, ketika when we receive the news, oh ini menyerang negara ini membunuh itu, kita it's very easy for us to judge because there is a distance. Tapi if it's somebody very close to us, lebih susah ya. We tend to take side with this person and we cannot be objective anymore. Jadi itu the closeness, proximity with the object matters a lot. Yeah? Next question. Any because are there any other factors to consider? There are many other factors, any, but if I give you all today, you will be overwhelmed and you will stop thinking. Critical thinkingnya nanti berhenti because there is so much information that you have to process. Akhirnya nanti malah nggak dapat apa-apa. Ya. So stick to the three. Identify the problem. Maintain critical distance, try to find something new. If you find a problem, you find something new. Okay, but in order to be able to do that, you need to create a distance from the object that you observe. In application in the real life, be skeptical. Unless you can find the truth, do not forward the message to anybody else. It all stops at you. Begitu. Yeah. So this is enough, I think, for today. And what is important now for you to do, the next step is to practice that. Gitu. Yeah. So Herianto, sorry, there's a second question. How we arrange jumbled problems? Okay. Yeah. You can, of course, you can. Very likely, it's not just one problem. Once you apply critical thinking, once you activate your critical thinking, you may find more than one problem, many. And there are all those like millions of questions of why. They all appear in your mind. Then it's time for you, for an analyst, to sit down and write down. Write down all the whys, all the why questions. Let's say you have 10, 15. And then look at them all. Oh, ini yang nomor 1 pengulangan dengan nomor 5 dan nomor 7. Delete. Oh, yang nomor 2 tidak bisa dilepaskan sambung menyambung dengan yang nomor 10. Dekatkan. Jadi, all these questions that are initially like jumbled questions, gradually they become one coherent idea. Then they start making sense to you. Oh, saya mulai melihat nih gambar besarnya. Tadinya ruwet. Now I begin to see. Now, in order to arrange and make it coherent, semua whys itu tadi, this is when you need analytical thinking skills. Kemampuan membedakan satu dan yang lain, menghubungkan satu dan yang lain. Itu analytical thinking skill. Analytical thinking skill can only happen kalau sudah dimulai prosesnya by critical thinking skill. Itu ya, Eni ya. So Herianto, yeah, good morning. Thank you. Okay, thank you to you. Traditional puppet show, so it can be popular in our new generation. In competition with Drakor, Ko Bing Ho, Avengers, Fantastic Four, and so on. I don't know, but time has changed. Technology has developed in a way that was unthinkable 100 years ago or 50 years ago. Yeah, at the time when traditional puppet show was popular. So what is happening now with traditional puppet show? Do they need to embrace technology? Yes, in a creative way, not in an imitative way. Bukan cuman meniru-niru, but in a creative way. Okay, it's the same with the way we learn now. Yeah, we used to learn in a physical classroom, meeting our classmates and our teachers physically, and now because of the situation, because of the circumstances, we have to embrace learning technology, Google Classroom, Google Meet, all those things that we have not used before the pandemics. Now suddenly we are familiar with them. And is the result good? Yes. Are there bad things because of this? Yeah. But there are also good things. Like today, I can easily talk to you and meet you because of the technology. So it's the same with Pepper. Will there be something lost if we embrace technology instead of Pepper? Yes. But there are also things to gain, positive things that we can gain. Do you know that now in Indonesia, we have game creators, Indonesian youth, young people like you, who create billion rupiah games using historical characters from Indonesia. Tetapi they are dressed in modern costume, using modern tools and equipment, tidak lagi panah, keris, dan santet, okay? Tetapi modern tools, modern dress, modern look, nggak lagi yang penampilan wayang zaman dulu. And suddenly they become so interesting. Yeah. The action juga menjadi very interesting. And there are now games. If you don't believe me, you should be skeptical to what I say. Check Lokapala. Lokapala is a local game creator or game producer, using characters like Gajah Mada, Hayam Wuruk, Raden Wijaya, and so on. Tetapi in a totally fascinating new way. Okay? If you are gamers, then you would like to check out Lokapala, for instance. So yeah, that is the answer for Herianto. Is that all? We not 5 of them.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Pak Manneke, for 5 answers, great answers for 5 questions. We can actually highlight that basically when we talk much about being critical, it means that we should be skeptical. Like what I've said in all classes that we have, that actually we should be skeptical because as the scientists, as the researchers, and of course as the analysts, then you need to be skeptical. You should not be sure. You should convince everything with every single effort that you do. And one thing that Mr. Manneke has already highlighted is, of course, when you really want to have such a critical thinking skills, then you need to analyze. You need to have that kind of critical analysis first. Yeah. So after being very accustomed to keep on practicing again and again, then of course you are going to have such a critical thinking skills, because skills should be trained, skills should be practiced, right? So this is like what you have already got from Mr. Manneke, that actually most of the questions are very correlated with the word be skeptical. That's nice then. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Manneke. Okay, now it's time for a break. Maybe you need to have a little drink first or such little snacks or something. So we are going to watch the video first. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Manneke. We are going to come to the second sessions. Okay, don't go anywhere. Okay, yeah, session first then. Yes. By the way, while waiting for the video, don't forget. Oh yeah, okay, go on.
Good morning, guys. How are you today? I hope all is well. By the way, di hari yang cerah ini, kita main-main ke kampus yuk. Kampus S.Pda Pertiwi. Let's go! Sekolah Tinggi Bahasa Asing Pertiwi didirikan pada tahun 1970 dengan nama Akademi Bahasa Asing Pertiwi Indonesia atau ABAPI. Selanjutnya, ABA Pertiwi Indonesia berubah menjadi Sekolah Tinggi Bahasa Asing atau S.Pda Pertiwi. Saat ini, S.Pda Pertiwi mempunyai dua pilihan program studi, yaitu D3 Bahasa Inggris dan S1 Sastra Inggris. Kampus utamanya terletak di Jalan Dewi Sartika, Kampus 2-3, Cililitan, Jakarta Timur. Dan kampus keduanya terletak di Jalan Insinyur Haji Juanda, nomor 133, Bekasi. Nah, kali ini kita akan main ke kampus utamanya nih, S.Pda Pertiwi Cililitan. Kampus S.Pda Pertiwi terdiri dari 3 gedung utama, yakni gedung A dengan 5 lantai, gedung B dengan 2 lantai, dan gedung C dengan 2 lantai. Ruangan ini adalah ruangan pendaftaran atau bisa juga disebut ruang front office. Ruangan ini adalah ruangan untuk pendaftaran dan pusat informasi. By the way, kalau kamu mau daftar kuliah, bisa masuk ke ruangan ini atau bisa juga daftar via jalur online ya. Ketik saja www.stba-pertiwi.ac.id. Sebelahnya terdapat ruangan keuangan. Oh iya, sistem keuangan di S.Pda Pertiwi sudah terintegrasi dengan aplikasi Siap, di mana mahasiswa bisa melihat transaksi keuangan mereka secara online yang dapat diakses via HP. Keren kan? Di lantai 2 terdapat ruang kelas yang bisa dipakai dengan mahasiswa. Tapi berbeda dengan lantai 3, ada aplikasi di sana. Penasaran? Langsung naik aja yuk. Let's go! Buku lagi. Apakah ini perpustakaan? Yes, benar banget. Ini perpustakaan. Ini tempat membaca, mengerjakan tugas, sekaligus mencari referensi kalau sedang mengerjakan skripsi. Ada pula lab komputer untuk S.Pda Pertiwi. Ada juga fasilitas telepon untuk kelas bahasa Inggris yang bisa dipergunakan untuk mata kuliah listening atau juga speaking. Cakep. Sekarang kita main ke gedung B yuk. Gedung yang baru saja jadi tahun lalu, masih segar dan fresh tentunya. Mau tahu di sana ada fasilitas apa saja? Check it out. Wow, keren. Ternyata ini gedung barunya. Yes, betul banget ini. Kita mulai dari mana ya? Dari bawah aja deh. Gedung B lantai 001 ya. Di lantai 001 diisi oleh seluruh laboratorium milik Akbar Pertiwi. Fasilitas ini juga boleh digunakan oleh mahasiswa S.Pda Pertiwi ya guys. Apabila ingin praktik memasak atau mengadakan kegiatan seminar kecil, sangat bisa dimanfaatkan nih. Masih di lantai yang sama, terdapat auditorium. Biasanya, ruangan ini dipakai untuk kelas public speaking. Sudah tahu dong siapa dosen yang mengajar kelas ini? Hehehe. Di depan auditorium ada lapangan yang juga berfungsi sebagai kantin. Tempat ini termasuk favorit mahasiswa ya. Selesai di gedung B001, sekarang kita coba naik ke atas ya. Ke lantai 1, gedung B. Ruangan pertama yang ditemui adalah ruangan dosen S.Pda Pertiwi. Ruangan ini sering digunakan untuk rapat internal tim secara menyeluruh. Membahas apa saja, termasuk akademik dan beasiswa ya. Beralih ke sebelahnya, terdapat kantor struktural S.Pda Pertiwi yang terbagi atas 2 ruangan. Di ruangan pertama ada ruangan ketua S.Pda, wakil ketua 2 bidang keuangan, dan ruang administrasi akademik. Kantor S.Pda yang kedua, yakni ruang wakil ketua 1, bidang akademik, ruang kepala jurusan, meja kepala LPPM, dan juga kepala program studi. Sekarang kita naik ke lantai 2 yuk, masih di gedung yang sama ya. Di lantai 2 ini, fasilitas yang bisa dimanfaatkan oleh mahasiswa adalah ruang rapat dan ruang terbuka. Nah, ruangan terbuka ini spot favorit banget nih. Anginnya sepoi-sepoi gitu. Colokannya juga tersedia di kanan dan kiri meja. Jadi, asik banget buat mencari inspirasi. Oh iya, jadi mahasiswa itu selain harus fokus belajar di dalam kelas, mahasiswa juga harus aktif berorganisasi ya. Dan untungnya S.Pda Pertiwi memberikan wadah agar bisa berkarya. Di senat mahasiswa namanya. Kamu boleh berkreasi untuk portofolio diri kamu juga. Cayo! Selain ruangan-ruangan yang sudah disampaikan di atas, sisa ruangan lainnya adalah ruang kelas. Salah satunya ada ini. Mahasiswa belajar di dalam kelas dengan fasilitas yang nyaman dan memadai. Metode pengajaran juga sangat dekat antara dosen dan mahasiswa. Keterbukaan mimbar akademik membuat mahasiswa bisa belajar dengan nyaman. Bahkan tak jarang, dosen bisa menjadi sahabat dengan mahasiswa ataupun orang tua yang mengayomi anaknya. Waduh, so sweet. Selain fasilitas yang sudah disediakan, S.Pda Pertiwi juga mendorong dengan membuat berbagai kegiatan yang seru dan juga menarik, seperti kegiatan Basic Leadership Training, English Night Performance, English Debate, aneka seminar seperti seminar pendidikan karakter, public speaking, drama, pengabdian kepada masyarakat, hingga kegiatan olahraga kesenian yang berada di bawah naungan Senat Mahasiswa S.Pda Pertiwi. Semua itu dibuat demi menciptakan lulusan mahasiswa S.Pda Pertiwi yang berkarakter dan berkompetensi unggul tentunya. Tak terasa hari sudah menjelang sore. Seluruh ruangan dan fasilitas kampus S.Pda Pertiwi Cililitan sudah kita lihat bersama. Sekarang saatnya kita pulang yuk. Doakan terus ya. Semoga S.Pda Pertiwi bisa semakin maju dan berkembang. See you on top.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Stanley, for the presentation and the slide. Okay, guys, thank you very much for you who are still hanging here. Right, now we are going to run into the second session of our seminar Sastra. Yeah. And I want you to really pay attention because the new material that will be delivered by Bapak Dr. Manneke, yeah. So you have to listen carefully. Like I told you at the very beginning, you have to make some notes in order to be able to make good questions, because from now on we are going to select the best questions, and then in the end there will be prizes waiting for you. Right, ladies and gentlemen, proudly present to you Bapak Dr. Manneke untuk menyampaikan materi lanjutan kedua. Bapak Dr. Manneke, the floor is yours.
Oke, sebentar, mungkin Bapak Manneke sebentar agak sedikit Pak Masuri. Okay, thank you very much, Pak Masuri, for the questions. Actually, we are going to come to the second session, and before we come to the second session, I just would like to remind all of the students who would like to have questions. Actually, for the second session, then we are going to open 5 questions for the new materials, of course. So keep on listening for the second session first, and then try to give questions based on the materials that Mr. Manneke would like to present. So it's nothing to do with the first session anymore. And the second point that we are going to underline is, of course, all of the students should fill the form, 2 kinds of forms. The first is full of attendance, and the second one is full of the form of the certificate. Because this web seminar over, then you are going to have the e-certificate directly, okay? But the problem is you should fill the form of attendance and certificate, and of course you need to join this seminar till over. That's the point, okay? If you go somewhere up there, of course we're not going to give you the certificate. We are going to give you 2 certificates. The first is e-certificate and the second one is printed certificate. Okay, thank you very much. And we are going to go back to our great keynote speaker, Mr. Manneke. Time is yours. Ya, masih di mute ya Bapak ya. Ya, Bapak masih, Pak Manneke masih di mute. Sorry, suaranya Bapak. Ya, sebentar ya. Oke. Yeah,
all right. Now, this is like concluding the first session because I didn't have a chance to do it in the first round, so I will quickly conclude. This is what we do in literary studies. If we want to apply critical thinking, we can analyze the text using critical thinking. I have already talked at length on how to do that. We can also question the author's motive and intention. We can also relate the text and the context, okay, where the text is produced or where the text is read by the audience. And we can also analyze the audience itself, how the audience respond to the text. So you can do research or studies in these 4 different areas, okay? Analyzing the text as the main focus, looking at everything that I have explained before, and then looking at the voice of the author. Sometimes the voice of the author silently and secretly could also get into the story. Okay. Suddenly we ask question, wait, who is this speaking? Is this the narrator? Is this the character? It doesn't seem to be either one. So who is speaking? Then it may be the author. The author also gives comments to the event in the story. Yeah? Sometimes that can happen. So if you find that, then you can do studies of the intention of the author. Contextualization is when you put the text into a specific context. Okay, if the text is produced now during the COVID-19 pandemic, then you can ask the question, why is the text produced at this moment in time? Okay, what or how does the text respond to the pandemic? Okay. That is also a contextualization of the text. Yeah, and then lastly, as I said, you can study the audience itself. How can we do it? We cannot interview people because now there are lockdowns everywhere and we cannot meet people. So how can we do it? You can do audience analysis online, looking at comments on YouTube, for instance. Looking at comments on websites, on blogs, vlogs, how people think about something, how people comment about a certain issue, and so on. Then you can study and research them all in order to find out what does the audience think about something. Okay. So many possibilities. These 4. It's just like a very limited summary of what we could do. with critical thinking skills if we want to practice it in the context of literary studies. Okay, so why is this all that we have discussed since this morning up to now? Why all these matter? Okay, because we are talking about higher order of thinking here. This is the difference between an intellectual and an ordinary person. If you're an intellectual, you need to be at the higher order level of thinking. Okay, because your job is to enlighten and to inspire other people, okay? To enrich them, not to be part of them. Kalau mereka semua itu bodoh, tidak kemudian kita ikut menjadi bodoh. But you open up the way for them. That's why you need to be at the level of higher order of thinking, and that is critical thinking. And when you read, it doesn't matter what you read. It can be newspaper, it can be news from social media, online media, or a literary text. Read by resisting what you read. Okay, yeah. So all the time when you read, you keep on asking question. Masa begitu sih? Yang benar. Nggak percaya saya. Masa. So when you do that, you are actually resisting what you are reading, and that helps you practice. That helps you sharpen your critical thinking skills. Okay, when every time you read, you keep on challenging whatever the text says to you. And the last one is, that's what I discussed in passing in round one, positive skepticism. We don't want to be a skeptic, but unfortunately, in this digital information age, we have to be skeptic in order not to be controlled by information technology. We still want to control information technology, the information as well as the technology. Yeah. So be skeptical in a positive way. Okay, because that makes you careful. That makes you cautious. Okay. So next slide. Now we move to the subtopic number 2. Subtopic number 1 is literary studies. Subtopic number 2 is cultural studies. This is, simply speaking, this is the implementation of critical thinking skills that you practice in literature classes, implemented into real social situations. Okay, through cultural studies. It's still an academic activity, but the object, the text, is now social reality. It's no longer a book, no longer a story, but what is really happening out there to real human beings. That is cultural studies, and we want to apply that because this is the skill that you need to be able to bring out from the classroom to the real world. Okay, so number 1, stop doing business as usual. Stop thinking in an ordinary way. The catchphrase now is think outside the box. Be different from other people. Then you will be successful in whatever job you do after you graduate. Okay, then your boss will be able to single you out from many other employees because you don't do business as usual. So the mission of cultural studies is actually to destabilize, to shake the status quo. What is status quo? Status quo is the existing condition, the situation right now that people tend to be happy with. Oh, there is no problem anymore. Okay, it's natural. It becomes our part of our everyday life. Let it be. Kita jalani saja. That is status quo. That is business as usual. If you are implementing critical thinking in cultural studies, you would reject that attitude. Okay? You would say, no, saya nggak mau terima situasi begitu saja. Ya. Saya mau gugat, saya mau pertanyakan, saya mau periksa, ya, mengapa existing situation bisa menjadi seperti ini dan everybody tend to accept it as it is, take it for granted, ya, bahwa ya memang sudah sepertinya begini. That's what other people would say, but you would know. Okay, nothing is semestinya begini. Yeah. There is always an alternative. Okay? So that is the way of thinking that will help you succeed in the outside world after you graduate, but can also help you succeed in the academic world as well. So let's do something. Yeah, yeah. If that is our goal, if that is our mission to disrupt the existing situation, then what can we do? Number one, we understand and are aware of our own limitation. We don't have all the knowledge in the world. Number two, we don't have access to everything. Okay, we have access to certain things, but not to everything. We have some power to control some things, but we don't have power to control everything. So we have a limitation as an intellectual. That's why we should never pretend to be able to solve all social problems. Okay? But what we could do, we could intervene in the process. The process that everybody takes for granted, itu yang kita intervene. Yeah? Yeah. So you do something in order to change the process. All right? That's is the mission. Yeah. Why? Why do we have to do that? Because we have to make it possible for changes to happen. We want to make it possible for alternatives to be opened up for people, so they don't just have to live with one choice, but they have to realize, they have to be aware there are other alternatives. Yeah, not just one. Okay. Yeah. So imagine if you can think in this way, and then you go, you work with somebody, or you work on your own, doing your own business, or you work with other business people, you will very likely be successful and be outstanding if this is the way you function, yeah, after you graduate. Now, in cultural studies, to be critical means to be critical to ideology, not to a literary text, but to ideology. But actually, there are many similarities between them, which I will try to show you now. Now, what is ideology? When somebody hears the word ideology mentioned, so immediately, that person would think of some heavy, serious stuff. But ideology doesn't have to be understood in that way. Ideology can be understood in a very simple way. It's a set of ideas, ideas in our mind that when they become one, they relate to one another, they form a belief system. A belief system in what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad, what is ideal and what is not ideal. All these things, yeah, which shape, which form the way we understand the world. Okay, that is ideology. Patokan, pedoman that we use to understand, to interpret our life every day. That's why on the way to campus, when you see an accident, then you can make a judgment. Oh, yang salah supir. Oh, yang salah penyeberang jalan. Oh, yang salah pengendara motor. It's because you have a belief system which tells you this is right and this is wrong. This is good and this is bad. And based on that, every day, every time you make a judgment about something, you draw a conclusion about something based on that. And from one person, it can be different to another person. Yeah, okay. But ideology is unique because it has the capacity to make many people believe in one belief system. Okay, so ideology is not an individual-based belief because it has the power to reach out to many people to believe in one similar thing. That is ideology. Okay? Yeah. So, where is the place and the position of an individual like me and you in ideology? We don't control ideology, but we function, we live within an ideology. In other words, ideology controls us. Is there any way out? No, there is no way out. Okay. Whoever you are, you must have a belief system. You must have a particular ideology that you use at your guidance, as your guidance in your life. Yeah. Okay. And that's exactly what the problem is. Because we cannot control ideology. Instead, we are controlled by ideology, and we can only function within an ideology. That is the problem. A way out, no. But when there is a way out, it doesn't mean you totally surrender. Okay. When there is no way out, it means that you must keep being critical to it. Yeah. Okay. So ideology won't be able to control you totally. Yeah. As long as you remain critical to an ideology, it cannot take over you because you still resist to a certain extent, to a certain limit. You still are able to resist ideology. You cannot reject it completely, but you can still critically negotiate with ideology. Caranya bagaimana? Keep asking question. Kok harus begini? Kenapa harus begini? Like what you do on campus. You know the rules, but you keep on negotiating with your docent. Boleh nggak 2 hari setelah deadline? Boleh nggak telat sedikit? Boleh nggak? Ini, you know tidak boleh, but you still actively and creatively negotiate with the rules. Now imagine the rules is ideology. You cannot change it. You have to live by the rules. But in practice, you keep on negotiating with the rules. Okay? That is what is meant by being critical to ideology. If you do that, that means you keep yourself creative. You don't surrender to the status quo. You don't accept things just as they are, but you are trying to keep on being creative. And when you do that, you intervene in the process. And sometimes new things can happen. Tiba-tiba dosennya realize, iya ya, benar juga ya. And then some parts of the rules can be changed because of that. Another example, look at the street protest. Demonstrasi tentang bermacam-macam isu. You know that you face a great power of the state. You know you cannot change the reality, but you still go to the street and do something about it. You don't just passively accept everything given to you. And as a result, no matter what, then the state would think, kenapa ya ini ditolak oleh banyak orang ya? Masih bisa nggak kita ubah sedikit supaya penolakan tidak terlalu kuat seperti sekarang? So the state respond, no matter how powerful it is, it respond to your action, yeah, by giving clarification, by modifying certain aspect of the issue of undang-undang, whatever that you protest on the street. But if you stay silent, not doing anything, then nothing changes. So that is the idea. To be critical to ideology is not to accept reality as it is, sebagai nasib, takdir, whatever, kodrat, tetapi you do something about it because it's your life. Okay? Yeah. So now let's talk about the ideological tools that ideology use in order to operate in our life. Okay? Remember, ideology is a set of ideas that form one coherent belief system or one coherent way of looking at the worldview. Okay? Ideology needs tools in order to work, or in order to keep on working, to keep on functioning. So what are the tools that ideology usually use to express itself? Culture, that's one big thing. Another big thing is institution. Here are the examples of culture and institution. The media. The media is perhaps the most powerful tool of ideology. If you have an idea and you want to spread it, to market it, to promote it to as many people as possible, use the media. Then millions of people all over the world will be able to read what your idea is. And if you use the right marketing strategy, then you will be able to persuade many people to agree with you or to believe in what you say. So the media is very, very important. That's why nowadays in many universities there is media studies, looking at how media work in order to create a reality, in order to be able to convince people that what they say is the reality, is the truth. Okay, with social media, it's even crazy. Okay, it's not necessary for you to promote or to offer or to sell the truth. Even fake news and hoaxes can be very convincing, and people can accept and consider them true or the truth. Yeah. Okay. Another tool of ideology, okay, sarana ya, alat yang dipakai ideologi untuk supaya terus ada dan laku. State, negara. Why? Because the state has power to force people to do something. Okay, even if personally you don't like it. Dilarang kencing di jalan. As a result, in the middle of a traffic jam, you can hardly hold your urgency to urinate, but because there is dilarang kencing di sembarang tempat, okay, you stay in your car in a very uncomfortable situation, trying to fight the urge to urinate, because you know there is a rule that prohibits urinating in public places. Who makes the rule? The state. Okay. How come it be that powerful? Because it has power to punish you if you break the rule. Yeah. But the school also has the same power. It has the power to impose, yeah, and to make sure that the school rules are always observed and obeyed by whoever in that school, work or study. They all have to obey the same rules. Okay? The law also a very powerful ideological tool because the law has the capacity to sanction, to punish if you don't follow the rules. Religion, that's very obvious. Kalau tidak, ya masuk neraka. Okay, or berdosa. Yeah. But very simple things that we do every day can also become very powerful tools of ideology. The ritual and habit that we every day do. Bangun pagi, sikat gigi, minum kopi, mandi, and then you go to campus. If you miss one of them, your life that day becomes so miserable. Wah, lupa minum kopi. Wah, sakau langsung. Nggak bisa konsentrasi, nggak bisa belajar, tersinggungan, sensitif. Alright? Tidak sikat gigi, lupa. Oh, suddenly you lose your self-confidence. Ngomong sama temennya yang cakep keren, jadi tutupan mulut. Because you know that you forgot to brush your teeth in the morning. See? Okay? All those habits and small, simple rituals you do every day, they control your behavior. They control what you do. Yeah. Taste itu cita rasa, selera. Okay, whether you love eating in warung, food street vendor, or you have to eat in shopping mall or fine dining restaurant, itu it's taste that shapes you. Okay, and many others. But these are all the most outstanding and most powerful culture or institution that can be used by ideology as its tools. Okay, and then the result of all this is what we call hegemony. Okay, this is perhaps a new term. Hegemony is a situation, a condition when a certain ideology penetrates deeply and effectively into all aspects of our everyday life in such a way that it becomes natural to us. Ya memang sudah seharusnya begitu. Oh, apalagi. So when you say that about something, that means a hegemonic ideology is working within you. Ya, ya zaman ini semua orang harus punya kredit card. Kalau tidak, ya nggak bisa booking hotel, tidak bisa pesen tiket online. So suddenly, credit card is the rule of the game of our everyday life. Yeah. It used to be a luxurious thing. Now it becomes a basic necessity if we want to survive our life. Especially now in the information technology era. You order everything online and you need e-money. If not credit card, then it's electronic money in many different forms. Now it becomes something that you cannot live without. Yeah. So now it becomes a tool of hegemonic ideology to control your life. Simple question, kira-kira ideologi apa sih itu yang memanfaatkan kartu kredit, some people say it's global capitalism. You cannot escape. You cannot escape global capitalism. You may hate capitalism, but you cannot escape it. You cannot live outside it. In big universities like UI, UGM, ITB, hegemonic ideologinya pada saat ini adalah ranking. We hate ranking, but we cannot live without it. So we have to play the game of ranking. And sooner or later, yeah, schools like S.Pd as well will have to take that very seriously because ranking is now related closely to reputation. and reputation means survival in the future for an academic institution. Okay. So these are areas where you, with your critical thinking skills, can negotiate with ideology. Okay, you can find ideology in the area of meaning. Can we mute, please? Okay, okay, I will continue. So these are areas of analysis that you can go into if you decide to do so. If I want to negotiate critically with ideology, what areas are open to me to do that? Number one, area of meaning. In the area of meaning, there is always a hegemonic meaning. Let me give you an example from my own literature class in UI Depok. Okay. It is always hard for me to teach my students in my literature class about tema. How can I make sure that 40 students in my classroom will arrive in the same formulation or conclusion of tema that I want them to see? Okay, when I ask them to do group work, let's say there are 7 groups or 8 groups, then they will come up with 8 or 7 different themes. And it is hard for me to control or to make sure that they will arrive in the same theme that I have. Yeah. So what happens in my class at the end of the day? All the other themes that the students propose are wrong, incorrect. Which one is the correct one? My theme, because I am the teacher. If you don't agree with my theme, then you won't get A in my class. You will probably get C minus, yeah, or you fail. But if you agree with my theme, you will get A. When I do that, my meaning of a certain literary text becomes a hegemonic meaning. Yeah. And when it becomes a hegemonic meaning, it opens up ways for resistance. Ketika menjadi hegemonik, justru dia bisa dilawan. So my students can come to me, sorry, sir, but in my reading of the text, I find evidence, a lot of evidence, A, B, C, D, E on page this, and page this, which tells me that my conclusion of theme is as correct as your theme. Saya tidak mengatakan tema dosen itu keliru, tapi the theme that I propose sama benarnya dengan the theme that you want us to accept. Okay? No debate, no fighting, just show the evidence from the text, from your own reading. Ini saya baca, saya nemu di halaman ini, teksnya bilang begini. Jadi my theme is not wrong. Ya. Okay. Sama benernya dengan your theme. And probably if there are 5, 6, 7 different themes, they all can be correct because each group undergoes a different process of finding problems and finding new things. Okay? Each group implements critical thinking activities in their own dynamic ways, taking all the personal experience of the members of the group, taking all the social backgrounds where they come from to enrich their discovery of the group theme. So how can I, the teacher, force the students to accept one single true theme? I can only do that if I use my power as a teacher. Take it or leave it. Yeah. Okay. But if my students come with solid evidence from the text, then my power suddenly becomes limited. Okay. Yeah. Because the argument is not based on subjective like or dislike. It is evidence-based argument. And to do that, you need critical thinking in combination with analytical thinking. This is a perfect weapon to challenge something, okay, which you think is wrong. All right. Okay, so that's one. Okay. Yeah. So you can challenge hegemonic meaning proposed by anybody or any institution who happens to be in power. Yeah. Number two, social reality. Now, people who do cultural studies believe that social reality is a construction. There is nothing natural about social reality. Social reality is made by human beings. Doesn't have anything to do with takdir, with nasib, with kodrat. Okay, that's why you can change it. That's why you can do something about it. That's why you don't have to accept it as given. Ya udah begini mau apa? No, you can change it because it is made by human being. Ya. Kenapa ada sekian orang itu hidup miskin, sekian orang hidup kaya? Is it nasib or is it something that we can change? If you believe in cultural studies, you say we can change it. Yeah, but if you believe in destiny, Rimo, yeah, okay, that's what life is for me. Yeah. And number three is the area of resistance. This keyword appears again here. Tadi ada ya in the first round. Resistant reading. Sekarang resistance. It's a belief that there is always space and there are always ways for us to resist hegemony. Tidak ada hegemoni yang total. Okay, yeah. No matter how powerful a group is, there is always space and ways to resist such power. Yeah. However, ini yang supaya tidak terlalu lebay dan berharap terlalu banyak. Our ability to challenge that power is limited, not total. Sama. Our ability to challenge the dominant power is limited. Okay, you cannot do a revolution, change everything drastically as quickly as possible. There is no such thing anymore today. Yeah. Okay. So the power, the ability, and the space to change something is always limited. And no matter how critical you are, I want to underline this because this is important. No matter how critical you are, you will always be already contaminated by the dominant ideology. Okay, this is my example with credit card, e-money, and so on. You may hate capitalism to the blood, okay, but you cannot escape capitalism totally. You still do things, you still use things that are approved, recommended, and promoted by capitalism. You still consume, yeah, things sold in shopping malls with 50% discount, 70% discount. You still want to use vouchers, okay, to shop, to dine, yeah, to travel, and they all bring benefit to capitalism. The only way to escape from capitalism is to live in the jungle in a cave. You don't meet people, you don't do anything, you just eat local fruits, okay, or catch your own fish. You don't buy them in supermarkets. So if you live in a big city like Jakarta, then you live under the influence of global capitalism. Okay, So the way you see the world is already contaminated by it. Probably not 100% controlled by it, but contaminated by it. But the fact that it's not 100% leaves room for you to resist, to be critical still to capitalism. So you can write articles, do research, okay, criticizing capitalism. But in your real life, you are practicing some of the things that are approved or recommended or created by capitalism. Okay, so this has to be understood very well. Otherwise, you would enter into a world of fantasy and hallucination, thinking that you are able to defeat that. Okay? Totally, once and for all, which is not true. So these are examples. Let's say all of you, I assume you live in Jakarta or in Jabodetabek, greater metropolitan Jakarta area, very much influenced by Jakarta somehow. Okay, yeah. So which imagination, which vision of Jakarta you have in your mind when Jakarta is mentioned? Whenever Jakarta comes across you in your mind, which Jakarta you see in your mind, in your vision? Look at these 4 pictures. The 4 pictures here are trying to show you that social reality depends on what point of view you want to use to see it. Point of view. Whose point of view? You. You are the narrator of the story of Jakarta because you are the citizen of Jakarta. And the way you tell what Jakarta is depends on your point of view, the way you look at Jakarta in your imagination. And sometimes it is closely related to your own social reality. If you live in the neighborhood that is shown in picture number 4, in the lower part of the right side, okay, you see skyscrapers in the background. A social reality is like this slum area in the foreground. And that's the kind of Jakarta you see in your reality. But if you live in fancy apartment buildings, super blocks, like the one you see on the top left corner, okay, then that's the way you see Jakarta in your life. That's Jakarta in your reality. You construct the reality of Jakarta based on your own point of view, okay, of the reality where you live. So if you live in a fancy super block like the upper top picture, that's your Jakarta is. Yeah. If you don't have money, you live in a slum area like the bottom right corner, you never dream of being part of Jakarta in the upper part of the right side. Okay, the fancy luxurious shopping malls where all the prices are hardly affordable for your standard. What's the point of going into that place if you cannot consume anything there because you don't have enough money to do that? Yeah, so you end up with warung, toko-toko kecil, Alfamart at the most. Yeah, okay. So that's the reality. But are they given? Are they takdir? Are they nasib? No. You can change them. You can asking critical question to this kind of reality. Why is it like this? Can we do something to change it? Yeah? Okay. Can I change my point of view when I see the reality of Jakarta? Which means I have to change the reality of my life and other people who has a similar situation with me. Yeah? Social reality, not just individual reality. So now these are the 3 levels of analysis that you can do. Critical analysis, okay? Combining analytical skill and critical skills in order to look at what is wrong with the social reality out there. Okay, not in the text, not in the book, but out there. So at the level of norms, values, or ideologies, these are the hegemonic power. Examples of hegemonic power. Kekuasaan yang saat ini sangat besar. Neoliberalism, which believes in the power of the free market. Okay. Bahwa pasar itu harus bebas supaya semua orang bisa berkompetisi dengan fair. Okay. And the state, negara, must not control or interfere in the process. Itu neoliberalism. Okay. So if you sell something at a very high price, then consequently people will not buy your goods. They will go to other places which sell at lower prices. That is the belief of neoliberal market. Okay, just to make it simple, short, brief explanation of what it is. Global capitalism, in which everything is controlled and based on the power of capital. Yeah, the more capital you have, the more control you have. Okay, and the more global your power is. And capitalism now has become already a global power. It's everywhere. It's in your bedroom, it's in your living room, it's in your house. It's in the way your family live. Okay. Traveling, shopping, and everything, all those things. Because we don't plant our own food anymore. We buy our food. Okay. Yeah. So that is one indication of the presence of global capitalism in your house, in your everyday life. Patriarchy, the power of masculinity, okay, which dictates and controls what women can do and what women cannot do. It's all based on the standard of the male standards. Still very strong in many places. Yeah. Okay. Nationalism can sometimes also be a hegemonic ideology. We still hear every now and then, from time to time, right or wrong is my country, for instance. And as a result, one country is at war with another country. Okay? Because we are not critical to it. We cannot say if it's wrong, it's wrong. If it's right, it's right. Yeah? And as a result, the world is never be at peace. Always there is conflict between one country and another, because everybody thinks right or wrong is my country. Okay, yeah. This is different from patriotism. Patriotism is the awareness, strong awareness and sense of responsibility of your duty as citizens. Okay, pay taxes, obey the rules, yeah? Help other citizens who are in need. Those are patriotism. But nationalism is different. Okay? Fundamentalism, because it tends to make you blind, yeah? To other kind of truth. You only accept your own truth. And as a result, you are in conflict with other groups. You can never in peace with other groups because of that. So these are at the level of abstract values, norms, and ideologies. In a more concrete level is social practice. Okay? The level of social practice, okay, which you can critically analyze in the context of culture studies using critical thinking skill. Education system, family system, community, consumption, okay, leisure. Bagaimana cara kita menggunakan waktu luang untuk menyenangkan diri sendiri. Migration, youth cultures, punk, metal, and all those other youth cultures. Education as a system can be critically examined. Family as a system can be critically examined. You can see how family has changed because of the external forces, because of consumption, because of capitalism, because of fundamentalism, and so on. How family has changed, has become different from 10 years ago, 20 years ago to today. Community. In the digital era, now you have virtual community, Facebook, WhatsApp group, Instagram. You and people that you don't know talk and debate about the same issue that happens in another place, elsewhere, even. Okay, and then suddenly you become a new virtual community, which is different from the traditional community, social community that we know so far. Consumption. In the past, people buy what they need. I need to eat today, so I buy food for today. Nowadays, consumption is sometimes we consume what we don't need because of discount, because of sales, because of voucher. You buy and buy and buy, and suddenly you have so many things that you don't actually really need in your house. But you are never able to stop it. Because external forces that force you to shop, to consume, is stronger than your personal or individual will to stop. Leisure itu sama. In the past, people in their leisure time, they go to warung kopi, nongkrong, ngobrol, minum kopi. Now, people go to McDonald's, to Starbucks, all those fancy places because they are related to social status. It's not just simply consuming coffee or food, but it has an effect on your social status. So leisure is not just a matter of making yourself happy, but also improving your social status in the eyes of other people. Migration, the movement of people from one place to another. With globalization, everything, it's easier now for people to travel from one place and another and to live in another place, not in his own or her own country. And then rebellious inclination among youth to be different from the older generation. That is also a very interesting area of study, ally, or all those things. Just any way that they can do in order to reject the older generation's culture and to create their own unique culture. There is also a way of negotiating with the dominant power, although they cannot change it, but they negotiate with it in sometimes very creative ways. And the third aspect is the material aspect, yang bisa ditangkap panca indera secara konkret. You can critically study the media. The media no longer bring or report reality to you. The media now creates reality for you. The traditional function of the media is to bring to you reality that happens elsewhere so that you will know something happens somewhere else. Like a reporter, only bring the news, whatever the news is, to your table. But now, the media creates the reality from non-existent to something that really exists. Because many people believe, then suddenly it becomes reality. This is also an area that you can critically research. How come? How can people be persuaded so easily and so overwhelmingly by the media. Okay. Caranya bagaimana? Lihat responses, the way people comment to news from detik.com, for instance, to kompas.com and so on. Lihat comments in order to see the effect of the media on the audience. Okay. Literature can also be an area that we critically study. Okay. In the context of cultural studies, I could talk, for instance, about Edward Said. He was a Palestinian leading intellectual living in the US, okay, who created the concept of Orientalism. Okay. Orientalism is the reality about Asia that was actually created by the West. It's not the real Asia, but the imagination of Asia created by the fantasy of Western people. But then they believe it as reality. Okay, and based on that, the West interact with Asia using their fantasy, not the reality of Asia. Okay, so that is Orientalism. And Edward Said pointed out, very important, that Western literature, including English literature, contributed to the creation of the fantasy about Asia. So literature, English literature, somehow contributed to colonialism and imperialism by the Western power on Asia. It's a very powerful accusation. Okay? But Edward Said can show you valid evidence from different Western texts, including plays by William Shakespeare, okay, which English literature students worship highly. Right? So literature can also be an area that you can research using cultural studies, not literary studies. Architecture, okay, buildings, yeah, tata ruang, planning. Okay. What is at the center? What are surrounding the center? What buildings? What functions of those buildings? Yeah. Hold on, I need to stop a while in order to plug my battery. Can I do that? Give me like 30 seconds to plug my battery to the electricity outlet. Okay, it's 30 seconds, right? And so other things like arts, museums, films, yeah, they can all be examined, investigated, researched using cultural studies. Almost similar in the way you study literature from a critical perspective. Look at this. These are what we do every day. Lining up, queuing outside a newly opened store. Sometimes it's just for sightseeing. Sometimes we really want to buy something. Sometimes we haven't decided, but once we are inside, suddenly we decide to buy something which we initially didn't need. Okay, and all the attraction, big sale, yeah, promotion, discount, and so on. Look at what changes. How beauty can become commodity. Okay? Beauty, which is supposed to be something natural, can now be commodified. Okay? Now people sell many different things related to beauty, from lipstick to whatever, you name it. Okay, so beauty brings money, right? Not just brings happiness, but brings money. Yeah? And now we have a new concept of masculinity. Okay? In the past, masculinity was always associated with being macho, being rough. Okay? But nowadays, masculinity all is always also almost similar to femininity. Yeah, even boys, male, men, they also use cosmetics. Okay, like K-pop, boy bands, yeah? Trendsetters. Okay, the way they dress, the way they take care of their well-being. Okay, you know. So there is almost no difference anymore nowadays between men and women in terms of consumption of uh, uh, beauty or body accessories. So something have changed incredibly, and we want to know how and why. In order to, number one, understand what's going on. Number two, to be able to tell ourselves, are we heading toward the right way or not? Okay. Yeah. In the sense that who gets the benefit and who becomes the object. Siapa yang diuntungkan oleh semua ini dan siapa yang jadi objek penderitanya. I'm going to use the word dirugikan because it seems all the buyers, all the consumers, they all feel diuntungkan. Yeah. Okay. Actually, the biggest benefit goes to the producer, the owner of the capitals, for instance. Yeah. So these are all like advertisement, social practice, like queuing in front of a newly opened. These are social practices that you can research, you can study, okay, from the perspective of cultural studies, behavior, everyday behavior. You don't need to talk about big things, just the everyday things that happen in your life, which doesn't seem to be worth studying, on the surface. But if you go deeper, you will find very complex and interesting things at the same time to study. So the overall objective of this is why do we spend like 2-3 hours to talk about this? It's because S.Pd Pertiwi, your teachers, they want to equip you with a critical awareness, kesadaran kritis of what is wrong with our reality. They also want to equip you with the ability to critically engage, untuk terlibat secara kritis, tidak hanya menjadi pengamat, penonton, tapi terlibat secara kritis, to criticize any construction of truth. Ya. Suatu tawaran tentang sebuah kebenaran. Okay. Somebody comes to you, ini yang benar. Buy it, beli. Ya. Be critical. Ya. Engage critically with it. Ya. Because this construction of truth may distort the reality. Bisa saja kebenaran yang ditawarkan ini, yang kita kemudian praktekkan, ya, itu adalah distortion, ya, dari realitas yang sesungguhnya. Okay. It controls you, it shapes you, it influences you, it guides you to do something in a certain way. Kita seringkali tidak menyadari itu. Okay. Ya. So, this construction of truth itu bisa dalam bentuk ideology, It could be in the form of fake news. It could be in the form of propaganda. Pilkada with all the kampanye, for instance. It could be in the form of disinformation, specifically designed in order to mislead you. And it could be in the form of kesadaran palsu or false consciousness. You think something is right, but actually it is wrong. There is false consciousness. Okay, yeah. For instance, I'm not sure if I want to give you this example, but there are many factories, ada banyak pabrik in the last few years that provide transportation, buses, big birds, pala kencana, all those buses, okay, to their workers who want to go mudik near Idul Fitri or Idul Adha or akhir tahun. Okay, and these buses will take the workers straight away to their kampung halaman. And then on the designated day, the buses will all be there again, di kampung, parking in front of the kelurahan office, waiting for the workers to and bring them back to Jakarta, ready to work the next day in the factory. If you, imagine if you are one of those workers. Waduh, enak sekali ya. Saya nggak usah susah-susah cari tiket. Ini bisnya disediain, baik sekali. Nanti dijemput. Waduh, enak deh, nggak pakai stres deh. Seger, nggak capek. You're happy with it. If somebody comes to you, ayo kita protes menentang supaya itu tidak diteruskan oleh perusahaan. Your first reaction would be, are you crazy? This is great. I'm happy with it. Why do I have to ask the company to end it? Now, somebody who studies cultural studies would interpret this sebagai a strategy applied by the factory in order to make sure that every single worker returns to work the next day after the holiday is over, fresh and ready to be productive again. Okay. So ultimately, the biggest benefit is for the factory. Now imagine if the factory didn't do that. Pokoknya kita nggak mau tahu, cari transport sendiri, nanti balik sendiri, I don't know how, pokoknya hari Senin sudah harus masuk semua. Now, it is very likely that some will not be able to return in time, some will be late, some will come exhausted, tired, ya, capek, berjam-jam di dalam bis, kena macet dan sebagainya. And as a result, productivity drops. Tetapi by providing big bills and so on, then the factory can guarantee all the workers return on the designated day, in time, healthy, ready, and fresh to work again. So productivity level will be able to be maintained. Yeah. So you see the work of capitalism here. Okay, yeah. And the workers, the so-called object penderita, they don't feel menderita. That is the problem. Yeah? They don't see it as a problem. And they are participating in the process. But as a researcher, using cultural studies, applying critical thinking, then you can see the problem that other people don't see. Okay. Yeah. So that's it, more or less. Of course, you don't go to the factory and then provoke the worker, to protest. But you do research, you study, and then you write papers, you submit assignments, you publish your papers, you make a video, and then publish it in your YouTube channel so that people will be able to learn from you and see your points. Yeah. Those are the forms of intervention that you can do in your capacity now. Okay, yeah. Produce something to help raise public awareness of a problem that you identify in our social situation now. What are the strategy? Similar to what you do in literature. What is the plot? Who are the characters? Who tells the story? Okay? Who is the narrator? What is the point of view? What is the main message that they want us to believe in? So it's the same steps, the same practices, the same skills, but you apply it now to analysis of social situation. Okay. What is the plot? Oh, something happens, and then as a result, who are the actors? Who are the characters? Oh, ada dari kementerian, ada dari BEM, kemahasiswaan, ada dari, so who are the characters? Who is the main character and who are the minor characters? Who is the protagonist? Who is the antagonist? Yang dijadikan penjahat siapa, yang ditokohkan sebagai jagoannya siapa? From whose point of view? Dari sudut pandangnya siapa kejadian ini diceritakan? So if you read suara.com, detik.com, kompas.com, they tell different stories, different version of the same story. Because they apply different point of views. Oke, okay. Ada yang bilang pesertanya 1 juta, atau pesertanya cuma 10.000, atau pesertanya 5.000. It depends on the point of view of the media. Why different point of view? Because different media are controlled by different ideology. And that is the reason why you have to be skeptical with every news you receive. Now you see the connection. Now you see the silver lining, I hope. Okay? Yeah. Okay. And so that is the goal of critical thinking skills, actually, of us trying to help you build your critical thinking ability, because we expect you to be able to think outside the box, come up with creative visions, and do something different from what other people do. And hopefully you will be able to change some aspect of social reality that is not ideal at this point. Karena ada yang dirugikan, ada yang menjadi korban, ada yang menjadi objek, and so on. Yeah. So you don't want to make a total change. That is impossible. Okay. But you know, do what you can do in your community, in your organization, in your own group. Be the person who changes the reality, not just participating passively in whatever it is that has become the practice of the common practice. So yes, this is a very useful message. If you feel angry or agitated after reading a piece of news, think twice before sharing it with others, because that piece of news provokes you using emotional appeal. Now, good news, good information should make intellectual and logical appeal. Provokes you to use your brain, not your heart. But fake news very likely will approach you using emotional, sentimental appeal to provoke you to be angry at something, to be afraid of something. And then you act based on your fear, you act based on your anger, not on your common sense. Okay? So we see the implication, the importance of critical thinking is to prevent you from falling into that. So at this point in time, today in the world we live, unfortunately, sangat disayangkan, but we have to adopt it. Skepticism is a weapon. Yeah, because by being skeptical, you can fight against propaganda, against hearsay, gossip, rumor, unnamed sources, hoax, yeah, all those things. Yeah, and skepticism makes the world accountable. You have to prove what you say before you can convince me. That is accountability. Okay? Something that we can demand from the media, from the news sources. If you give me this information, be accountable, prove it, give me evidence that this information is valid and accurate, then I will believe you. Yeah? If not, no way. Yeah, don't bother. I will not waste my time for you. Okay? That is what being skeptical means. And I think after this is the last. So, if you are now wondering about your future, what will you do in your future? What will you do after you graduate? That may not be the most important question you should ask. Most important question you should ask is, when I graduate in the future, what can I do with my critical thinking ability? How can I help other people? How can I change the reality in my surrounding, in my everyday surrounding? Okay? I don't have to change the whole world. Yeah. What can I do to help open up people's mind and horizon? What can I do in order to help people see the truth and not be distorted by false truth? Okay? There are so many things you can do, all those things, in different work settings. Sebagai karyawan, sebagai pimpinan organisasi, sebagai aktivis, sebagai dosen, you can do all those things with your students, with your fellow employees, with your fellow workers, with your fellow team members, wherever you are, whoever you are with, be different. Okay? Use your critical thinking skill in order to be outstanding. And then you will be the leader of the group. Okay? So it will prepare you to deal with post-truth, truth that is not necessarily truth, but because it is repeated in a very intensive way, then it becomes truth. That is the definition of post-truth. Yeah. The examples are hoaxes, fake news, and so on. Yeah. That gradually, slowly, silently take control of your consciousness, of your common sense. And that is the most tragic thing that can happen to educated people like us, if that happens. So don't let it happen. So this is the last one. Thank you, Sarangi. May the force be with you. I will stop sharing and take questions now.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Manneke, for a valuable, precious time to be with. And of course, I really appreciate for all of the greatest students of S.Pda and alumni or whoever. Actually, you're so patient, not only in being attentive and listening, but also engaged, engaged and also involved. Yeah, you are a little bit mad and crazy with this one. I mean, you have already been consumptive to listen to Mr. Manneke. That's the witnesses, and yeah, you are hypnotized by him. Then okay, so you're not hungry. We are not hungry. That's great. Then. Okay, Pak Manneke, now we come to the second session for the questions, and we have already got some questions. Some of the students have already made some questions, but deeply sorry because we're trying to select some of the questions. Okay, please, Kak Sandy.
Okay, all right. So I try to be brief because I don't want to like hold you too long and miss your lunch. So David Pradana, the popularity universitarians take the prize that group for a long time. How can they ever recover? You can recover from poor reputation, from a stigma, by restoring your integrity. Can be personal integrity, it can be institutional integrity, and rebuilding your reputation, if necessary, from scratch one, from zero. There is no other way. So if your reputation is tarnished or stigmatized in the wrong way by other people, difitnah, dicemarkan, then the only way to fight it is to show to people that you have the integrity, that you are trustworthy, not the people who spread the fake news about you, but you are the one with integrity and reputation. Use the same media to fight that. Use Instagram, use Facebook, use everything, because you want to be able to fight your enemy on equal footing using the same weapons. Yeah. But different strategy. You don't want to use dirty, cheap strategy. You want to maintain your integrity. And the best weapon, the best strategy is when everything that you say and you do is based on data, based on facts, based on evidence. With that, nobody can say anything wrong about you. Okay, so that is one. What are the factors which induce ideology within an individual? Many factors, most of them external factors. You go out in the neighborhood, you see your neighbors buy this, do that, and you want, or you are forced to buy the same thing and to do the same thing. You're a family member, you go into your family and everybody in the family starts eating something, and then so you will eventually be influenced and then eat the same thing as the other members of the family. Okay, yeah, so that's how ideology works. You want to work, meet your fellow employees, and then all of them have the new model of cell phone. Sooner or later, you will want to get the new model of cell phone. So that's the way ideology work, influence individual. Okay, that's for Aroli. Fanny, why ideology cannot be controlled? The answer is simple: because it controls you. You cannot control it. It controls you. But you can negotiate with it to a certain limit, to a certain extent. You cannot topple it down, but you can negotiate with it. You can ask for more space. Yeah. Okay. Then usually you will get it, because ideology is never imposed by force. Tidak pernah dipaksakan dengan kekerasan. That is why you have room for negotiation. Okay. Yeah. Democracy, that is ideology. Democracy is also ideology, where your freedom to speak is guaranteed, and then you use that freedom in order to be critical to the practices of democracy, which you think are not democratic. Okay, for instance, yeah. So yeah, it cannot be controlled because it controls you. That's the reason. But you can negotiate with it from time to time in order to slowly and gradually change it a bit, little by little. Okay, yeah. Lutfi, thank you. I'm curious, is something that will be very important. Why there's so many unchecked situations freely now without any filter? Who will filter them? Who has the power to filter news that are circulating in different types of media? Online, offline, social media. Nobody, even the state, cannot have effective full control on what goes around in the media. So the best filter, the best control mechanism is you as critical reader, as critical thinker. You are the last bastion, benteng terakhir untuk common sense, akal sehat, dan kewarasan. Nobody can help you but yourself. The state, negara will not be able to help you. Pemerintah will not be able. The police will not be able to help you. It's in your hand. Okay? Whether you will let yourself to be carried away and controlled by all those information, or whether you want to be in control of that information. And critical thinking skill is your best weapon. Is it our nature as recipient of it to accept? No, it's not our nature. Our nature is to be cautious whenever we receive information. But with information technology, that changes. Information technology takes control from you, because information technology has the ability to overwhelm you with tons of information to the point that you cannot think clearly anymore. Your brain has a limited ability to process information. If the information comes in a huge number and repeated in a very intense way, then the brain is in danger of stop functioning. That's why it is important to be able to select and distinguish, memilih dan memilah. So you will not be overwhelmed. I can say that perhaps 80% of the information that comes to your cell phone today, they are all garbage. It is important for you to be able to identify those 80% and to take seriously the remaining 20% for further consideration. And probably at the end of the day, you will only accept 5%. That's the way you keep your sanity supaya tetap waras. Many, sometimes, if you receive like a news forwarded from by your or on your WhatsApp with no name, no source, it doesn't matter how long and how interesting, how provocative the content is, delete it and forget it. If you keep it, you're in danger of returning to that news again and then be attracted to it and be controlled by it eventually. Yeah. So delete many of them. Keep the one with trustable resources. Yeah. If there's a clear resources, and then you can cross-check that resource with the other resources. If that's the only resource with this news, then you check the others, they have no similar news. It may not be worth keeping. Delete. Yeah, even if you have a clear source. Okay. So initial filtering and selection process is important in order not to be overwhelmed by the tsunami of information like Lutfi wrote in the question. Stanley, among all themes proposed, similarities which can be close to an objective, align with the author's intention. objectivity of interpretation in literary analysis or relativity of interpretation. There is no object. When you come to interpretation, there is no objective interpretation. Interpretation is always subjective. But at the same time, no matter how subjective your interpretation is, it should be based on data, on evidence. How you interpret the evidence, that's where subjectivity comes into play. But the data itself is objective. So what is happening is actually you are creating a balance between the objective aspect and the subjective aspect. You make interpretation, but it's not random interpretation. It's an evidence-based interpretation. It can be different from other people's interpretation because they understand the data in a different way. But as long as you start from the same data, then there is always a chance to create what I would call convergence. Convergence means different things go in a parallel way. They don't have to unify and meet to be a single theme. There can be many themes that go in a parallel way, in the sense that they don't contradict each other. Okay? They're different, but they don't contradict each other. Why? Because the interpretations are based on the same set of evidence from the text. So it is important, Pak Stanley, to train your student to find the evidence in the text, to identify evidence. That is the identifying problems. Like a detective, you identify evidence. Like a doctor, in your diagnosis, you identify the symptoms. In other, based on the symptom, 5 doctors can come up with 5 different conclusions, but at least they can agree on the symptoms. Yeah. So if your students can agree on the evidence, then it doesn't matter if there is a diversity of interpretation, because interpretation is always subjective. Okay. Students and teachers, both of you, should not fear of subjective interpretation. You should not be afraid and should not avoid that. Okay. But what is important is to be able to find data, the solid one, the accurate one from the text, as a starting point to make interpretation. So with that, we can hope that although there will be diverse interpretation, but they are not contradicting each other. If you can achieve that in your class, you've done a good job. So that is all, Bu Bulan. Okay, Nika. Could what some constructors design of the benefit, because we only know less, even aspiration someone who belongs to okay. Could we get involved public would be one of the best options. Yeah, could, yeah. As I said, there are different ways to be involved and to make a difference. Okay? To be able to make alternative, to make changes. There are different ways, and getting into politics is one way, but it's not the best way. It's not the only way. Yeah, that's what I mean to say. Because politics has its own culture. Politics has its own ritual. Politics has its own system. If you're not sure that your integrity, personal integrity, is strong enough, you choose to get into politics, and you will be carried away by it. Instead of making a difference, you will be part of it and make matters worse. How to critically analyze literary work which was created entirely for propaganda? Prove it that it is a propaganda. Show in the text which part of the text indicate or can be used as evidence that the text is actually function as a propaganda. Okay, yeah. And that is where the ideology is in the propaganda. Okay? Or as a parody targeted group is pretty convincing. Yes, because again, everything that attacks, stigmatizes, or offending other groups is always enjoyable for us. You know? We can always laugh at it until the target is ourselves. Then we can no longer laugh. Okay? As long as other groups, so it's always funny and fun, but when it comes to us as the target, it's totally different. So that is why do not make ridicule of other groups. Okay. Now, you know, of course, a stand-up comedian like Ernest Prakasa, terus Kiki Saputri. Look at them. They always ridicule other people, but they never choose a target who is weaker than them. They always choose a stronger target. Tidak pernah menertawakan atau menjadikan bahan olok-olokan orang yang lebih lemah atau lebih rendah dari mereka. Yang dipilih sebagai sasaran selalu yang lebih kuat, politisi, anggota DPR, tokoh masyarakat. So, because if you choose a weaker target, then what you do is bullying. But if you choose a stronger target, that you are actually negotiating with them. yeah. So, David, how to critically analyze entirely propaganda? It's the same, I think, with Nika, yeah. Jadi, propaganda usually is explicit. What is more difficult and challenging if the propaganda is not explicit, if it is hidden and beautifully masked by the artistic aspect or the aesthetic aspect of the work. Now, it is hard to find a propaganda that is hidden under the beauty of the text. Now, the propaganda which works silently behind the mask of beauty of the art of the text, that is ideology. That is what we call ideology. It works silently. It takes control over you without you realizing that. With propaganda, you can just simply reject it if you don't like it. But ideology is harder to deal with. That is why we need critical thinking. Propaganda doesn't really need critical thinking. You can already see it and you can decide you like it or not. But ideology, you need critical thinking in order to discover it. That is all, Wulan. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Manneke. Again and again, I really appreciate for all of the great questions, the great thinkers. Yeah, we really realize that you become very critical students. Yeah. Yeah, you know that actually that's what we are going to highlight. Actually, the biggest purpose of the seminar is, of course, to practice and, of course, to train your critical thinking skills, because that is the most valued skills for your future. And one thing that I would like to underline from Mr. Manneke, sometimes, you know, that viral is sensational, of course,
yeah,
but
yes,
it is hyper reality sometimes. It is not real sometimes. You need to be selective and you need to be skeptical, because skepticism is virtue, is quality, and is your weapon for your future. So train your dragon by train your critical thinking skills. Thank you very much, Pak Manneke.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all the students
for the great opportunity for us to listen to your beautiful critical thinkings and also great analysis. And yeah, we have already got the expertise today, and I believe that you're going to get more and more understanding about literary analysis, cultural studies, and many other things. And of course, S.Pd Pertiwi is very, what you can call it, we are honored, yeah. We are honored to have Pak Manneke for the keynote speaker today. Okay, before we end for the, what you can call it, this one, maybe Pak Masuri would like to take over. Pak Masuri, SDMC, thank you very much. I'm the moderator today. I have already been finished. Yeah, okay. Yeah, my duties.
Thank you very much, Memulan, and abundant. Thank you very much for Pak Manneke. Ya, very inspiring. Ya, penjelasan hari ini. Oke, sekarang kita lanjutkan dengan pembacaan doa, teman-teman.
Sorry, Pak, sebelum pembacaan doa mungkin bisa foto bersama dulu, Pak.
Oh gitu, silakan Bu. Ya, kalau gitu kita semua dinyalakan, tolong teman-teman videonya.
Oke, pakai lipstick, boleh pakai lipstick. Be a little bit consumptive ya.
Iya.
By using your lipsticks.
Make sure wajahnya terlihat ya semuanya teman-teman yang hadir di sini.
Make sure that you have already turned on your camera. Okay, please. Mas Tepi, are you ready? Okay, we are going to count 1, 2, 3. Yep. Again ya, Pak Tepi. 1, 2, 3 to go. Okay, you can be free to explore yours. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you very much, Pak Masuri. Thank you very much.
Ya, thank you very much, ma'am. Ya, teman-teman, mari kita tundukkan kepala, ya. Kita rendahkan hati, kita merenung, memanjatkan doa dan meminta kepada Allah Subhanahu wa taala agar apa yang kita lakukan dalam kegiatan hari ini diridhoi Allah Subhanahu wa taala. Sebelum memulai doa, izinkan saya untuk memimpin doa penutup kali ini dengan berdoa menurut agama Islam untuk Bapak dan Ibu dan saudara-saudara sekalian ada di sini yang beragama non-muslim, mohon untuk dapat menyesuaikan menurut kepercayaan masing-masing. Terima kasih. Auzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Astaghfirullahaladzim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Hamda yufi ni'amahu yukafi mazida ya rabbana lakal hamdu kama yanbaghi li jalali wajhika karimi wa azimi sultanik. Allahumma shalli ala Muhammad wa ala ali sayyidina Muhammad. Allahumma ya Allah, ya Tuhan kami, dengan mengucap puji syukur kehadirat-Mu hingga tiada hentinya, kami memuji kebesaran dan keagungan-Mu atas segala rahmat karunia-Mu yang telah Engkau limpahkan pada kami pada hari ini dengan penuh keakraban dan kebahagiaan. Semoga Engkau dengan hadirnya kami di tempat ini dengan penuh rasa aman dan nyaman ini Engkau limpahkan barokah dan ridho-Mu dalam acara yang kami laksanakan ini. Ya Allah, ya M.Hum, ya Salam, ya Tuhan kami. Seminar kali ini sangat besar sekali arti dan maknanya bagi kami, terutama menjalin hubungan silaturahim antar sama manusia, makhluk terbaik yang telah Engkau ciptakan dari semua makhluk ciptaan-Mu ya Rabb. Engkau hadirkan kami di sini tidak lain hanya untuk sekaligus meningkatkan kompetensi kami di bidang pendidikan yang kami tempuh sesuai kompetensi kami masing-masing. Untuk itu ya Allah, tanamkan sifat rahman dan rahim-Mu kepada kami agar kami mendapatkan ilmu yang bermanfaat pada hari ini. Allahumma ya Qudus ya Salam, ya Allah penentu masa depan dalam milik generasi penerus kami. Jadikan kami sebagai generasi yang beriman dan bertakwa, hormat kepada orang tua, pada dosa dan para pendahulu kami, generasi yang berkualitas agar dapat membawa bangsa dan negara ini ke tingkat kemajuan yang kami cita-citakan. Tiada harapan dan dambaan kami, melainkan mengharap barokah dan ridho-Mu selalu menyertai kami. Allahumma ya Allah ya Arsyil Azim, ya Tuhan kami. Dengan telah berakhirnya kegiatan ini, kiranya ya Allah Engkau dapat melimpahkan pengetahuan dan kekuatan kepada kami semua. Dan Engkau tumbuhkan rasa persaudaraan, persatuan yang kokoh di antara kami, terjalin dengan baik dan utuh. Ya Allah Tuhan kami, Engkaulah Sang Maha Pengampun, ampunilah dosa kami. Ampuni kesalahan kami, dosa pemimpin kami, serta dosa dan kesalahan kedua orang tua kami. Perkenankanlah ya Allah doa dan pinta kami ini. Ya Allah, hanya padamu kami menyembah dan memohon pertolongan. Kabulkanlah doa kami ya Allah. Hanya padamu kami melakukan pengabdian, hanya padamu kami mohon pertolongan. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka antas samiul alim wa tub 'alaina innaka antat tawwabur rahim. Rabbana la tuzigh qulubana ba'da idh hadaytana wa hab lana min ladunka rahmatan innaka antal wahhab. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzabannar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi washabihi wasallam. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Oke, Ma'am, terima kasih.
Izin live ya. Terima kasih semua.
Terima Terima kasih Pak
Selamat
Manneke.
siang, salam sehat, sukses, tetap semangat selalu, sampai ketemu lagi.
Amin, amin.
Bye-bye.
Terima kasih sekali Pak Manneke.
Mari.
Thank you, Pak.
Ayo, bye-bye. Bye.
Terima kasih banyak
Bye.
Pak.
Thank you.
Terima kasih semuanya atas partisipasinya. Semoga
Bye-bye.
kita bisa berjumpa lagi dengan seminar-seminar yang jauh lebih berkualitas, jauh lebih hebat, pastinya akan menghebatkan. Dan Pak Manneke, mohon kiranya bisa nanti kita bisa bersilaturahmi lagi dengan judul yang lain.
Ya.
Oke, terima kasih.
Mari.
Saya tutup dengan mengucapkan wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dan jangan lupa kan juga pemenang
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Pemenang hari ini. Yang pertama adalah Kasip, yang kedua Heri Susanto, yang ketiga Herianto, yang keempat adalah Eni, dan yang kelima adalah David Pradana. Insya Allah kita akan transfer ya hadiahnya. Nanti mohon nomor rekening masing-masing teman-teman. Yang saya sebut tadi ada Kasip, Heri, Herianto, Eni, dan David Pradana. Thank you very much everybody. Have a nice great weekend. See you next with the greater performances of our great seminars. Okay, thank you. Success for all of you. Okay, bye. Yeah, see you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Terima kasih, ma'am.
Thank you ya, ma'am.
Yeah, sama-sama.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ma'am Mulan. Assalamualaikum.